Definitely, yeah. We'll talk on soon.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. You guys hear me all right?
Hey, you made
Good
it.
to see you all.
All right.
I'm always here. Good to see you guys.
No, I wouldn't be able to make it to your place in that time. All right. That's 13:30. Thank you, everybody. We'll open up today by acknowledging that we're conducting our business on the territories of Wet'suwet'en and Taushaga First Nations principally. However, since our meeting is online and in hybrid format, some of us are coming to you from other territories in either Nuu-chah-nulth or Coast Salish territory. Okay, because our meeting is in a hybrid format, we do broadcast live on YouTube, and some folks do attend as attendees in our Zoom meeting from time to time. However, we don't really monitor those things. We monitor an email address, responses@acrd.bc.ca, and that's if there are any comments or questions that will be relevant for the question period of any given agenda. That's when we would check. And so we'll welcome those of you in the gallery who are here by choice rather than having to be here. And so we'll move into introductions. Because this is a hybrid format meeting, we generally go through the table, including all of the staff who are here today, and introduce ourselves, and then I'll call out names online so that everybody is aware of everybody who's here. So we'll start counterclockwise. So we'll start with Heather. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Heather Zenner, Manager of Administrative Services.
Debbie Haggard, Councillor for the City of Port Alberni and Vice Chair of the Regional District Board.
Good afternoon, Klama Feni Cote, the Electoral Area Director for Sprout Lake on the ACRD.
Good afternoon, Mariah Coots for the Ashoka Central Government.
Good afternoon, Mike Sparrow, Electoral Area. Sorry.
Hi, Susan Roth for Beaver Creek. Thank you.
Veda Siga, ACRD Director for Area C.
Marilyn McEwen, Mayor of Ucluelet.
Person Johnson for Toquat Nation.
Daniel Sayon, the CAO for the ACRD.
My name is John Jack. I'm the Director for Hohoyet First Nations and Chairperson.
Good afternoon, Cynthia Dick, General Manager of Administrative Services.
Hi, I'm Mike Eric, General Manager of Planning and Development.
And good afternoon, Alex Dyer, Planning Manager with the ACRD. Thanks.
Thank you. And then online, Bob, please go ahead. And can you turn
Good afternoon, everyone. Bob Beckett, representing Electoral Area A, Bamfield.
And Tom?
Hi, Tom's Chair, appointed Director from the District of Tofino.
Lavana?
Lavana Mastrangelo from Ucluelet, Ucluelet First Nation.
And Fred?
From Boykin, Electoral Area Director for Beaufort.
And Mayor Minions.
Shari Minions, Mayor for the City of Port Alberni.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, so we have a bit of an agenda in front of us. From what I understand, there may be some extra materials that were included in your email and may have been handed out to you already. Are there any other items to add to the agenda? I believe it's just late materials.
That's just the late materials that were circulated yesterday.
And those are linked online. The easiest way to get to them is just through the calendar, usually. Just find the day today, and then you'll see all the materials linked. Okay, so since we don't have any other items to add to the agenda, could we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Thank you, Director Roth, seconded by everyone. We'll say Director Coots. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? The motion carried. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to declarations. Does anyone have any conflicts of interest, apparent conflicts of interest, or gifts exceeding $250 of value?
Mr. Chair?
Please go ahead, Director Haggard.
I'd like to declare a conflict with 9.1I, just because he lives in the same road as I do, and I have recused myself on the other times it's been discussed, or like to be consistent?
Okay, I'll just make note here. Okay, just last call. Director Boyko, please go ahead.
Hey, Chair, declare conflict of interest with item 9-G for golf due to close proximity.
91G.
Yeah, 7807 Beaver Creek Road. Thank you, sir.
All right. All right, thank you very much. And anyone else? Seeing none. All those in favor? Or sorry, we already did that. This is just conflicts of interest. Good. I'll check that off. 1 moment. There we go. Okay, so that brings us to the adoption of minutes. Item 4A, Partial Tax Committee Review dated February 27, 2024. Moved by Dr. Roth, seconded by Dr. Sparrow. Thank you. Any further comments? Does everything look all right? I wasn't at this meeting, so I can't verify. Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Your motion carried. Thank you. Next up is the Board of Directors meeting for February 28th, 2024. Moved by Dr. Roth, seconded by. Thank you, Dr. Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. All right, item C is the West Coast Committee meeting dated February 28th, 2024. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Dr. McEwen, seconded by Director Siga. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Item D is the Alberni Valley and Banfield Services Committee dated February 29th, 2024. Thank you, Dr. Roth, seconded by Director Coots. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. And item E is the Electoral Area Directors Meeting dated February 29th, 2024. Thank you, Director Roth, for moving, seconded by Director Sparrow. Any further comments? Comments being errors, omissions, corrections? None? All those in favor? Motion carried. Item F, the Accessibility Committee meeting dated March 5th, 2024. I appreciate the email that went out about this. Thank you, Dr. Roth, seconded by Dr. Johnson. Comments? None? All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Item G, Committee of the Whole meeting dated March 6th, 2024. Thank you, Director McEwen, seconded by Director Roth. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to item 5, which is petitions, delegations, and presentations. Normally speaking, when we have delegations and presentations, we have a time limit of 10 minutes. So if you see me holding up 1 or 2 fingers, that's how many minutes you have rather than me interrupting. If it doesn't look like you're very close to the end and we're going through to the 10-minute mark, what I might do is hit pause and ask the board to continue to the end of the presentation. Normally that doesn't happen. Sometimes it does. It's okay. We can just do that, and then usually it goes forward. We're not pressed for time at the beginning. It's usually at the end that we're pressed for time. So with that in mind, first item is Ms. Tamara Coco, of the Port Alberni Victim Services Society regarding their application for a grant in aid. So thank you and welcome. Yeah, so make sure that you use the red. So just hit the talk button, and then you'll be on camera. It's right there, on the thing there.
Good afternoon, ARCD Board. My name is Carrie Robertson, and speaking with me today is Donna Dolan. We are 2 of the 5 board members of Police Victim Services for the Alberni region. In an effort to quickly review and/or enlighten you as to the immense value of PVS in our community and what their services offer, we are going to perform some quick role-playing vignettes in the voices of typical PVS clients. We're nervous.
I was a victim of domestic violence. My name is Debbie. I had struggled with abuse from my husband for many years. Last year, he assaulted and threatened to kill me. I called 911. The police came and arrested him. They also connected me with Victim Services, PVS. I was so relieved that they did this because I had no idea what would happen next or what to do. So many challenges faced me, and I was left with my husband, and PVS kept me through these, as well as connecting me with valuable resources and support services to get me back on my feet.
I became a victim when my brother was murdered. My name is Dennis. A police victim service worker, along with the police, came to my door and informed me of my brother's sudden death. The news was devastating to me and our whole family. PBS didn't just deliver this shocking news to me. They stayed for hours afterwards, explaining as much as they could about the investigation, answering questions, explaining what would happen in the next few days, weeks, and months ahead. They also directed me to resources I might use to help me deal with my grief, trauma, and the financial repercussions of his death. I couldn't believe it, but the whole process took over 3 years from my brother's murder to his sentencing. I felt very fortunate to have had PBS to help me throughout that long ordeal of court appearances, the trial, me testifying, and finally to the sentencing, where I gave my victim impact statement. Their help was invaluable.
I was a victim of a break and enter. My name is Kathy. I had recently been widowed and was living alone. As soon as I discovered the break-in, I called 911. I was terrified and did not feel well. The police decided to send me to hospital because they were concerned about my health. It meant so much to have a victim services worker turn up at the hospital for me. I was feeling traumatized, alone, and in desperate need for someone to talk to me and tell me what to do. I couldn't go home right away as the RCMP had the forensic unit in my home. PBS helped me figure out where I might stay that night, got me in touch with my out-of-town son, and went over a safety plan for me for when I did go back to my house. I was scared for many weeks afterwards, and PBS were always just a phone call away from me. Months later, the culprit was caught, charges laid and approved. This was followed by weeks of court appearances and a trial in which I had to testify. PBS came to court with me every time I asked. They explained the court and criminal justice system to me. At the end of the trial, I got the very upsetting news that the verdict was not guilty. Somehow I felt responsible for the verdict. But PBS helped me get over this too and recognize that it was not my fault.
I was a victim of a sexual assault. My name is Alicia. It happened to me at a party. I went home and told my mom, and she convinced me to go to the police station the next morning and report it. I was very scared and confused, but I was helped by my police victim services worker, whom I was connected with right away at the station. They were with me through the whole process of giving my statement, being examined at the hospital, and talking of the after effects of the trauma I had experienced. Their support and assistance didn't end there. It continued and included my dealing with the devastating news that the courts decided not to press charges. Gradually, my PBS support worker helped me understand that my healing journey did not depend only on the outcome of the criminal justice system's decision. I don't know how I would have got through this assault without victim services. Thank you for your attention. I will now pass our presentation over to Acting Officer in Charge, Staff Sergeant Mike Thompson.
Good afternoon. Thanks. A unique sort of take on the victim service experience. Not something that I've ever participated in or seen. I'll be brief in the interest of time, but I did want to say that the benefits of victim services, most of us will never take advantage of them, because really that service is offered at the time when people are at their absolute excuse me, when people are at their absolute lowest in life. And so we have the good fortune of not benefiting from that. But they do a tremendous job for two primary reasons. The first of which is that increasingly the police are, well, the nature of policing has changed such that the complex nature of dealing with people is really beyond the scope of what the police are capable of doing. And so it's best left to professionals to deal with that. But the second part of it is that really it takes away a tremendous burden from the police. Not that we're not dealing in a trauma-informed way, but rather that we just really do not have the time to take somebody from the initial incident, sit with them for hours and hours, educate them and their family as to what rights and responsibilities that they have through the court process or as a victim. And as we heard, sometimes that can take up to 3 years or longer in some instances. So I just would encourage you to think very strongly about supporting the request for additional funding. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Tamara Coco, and I'm the manager for Victim Services in Port Alberni, Tofino, Ucluelet, and Howsett. I will be also brief and have some time to answer some questions if there are any. It has been 9 years since we've asked for a funding increase from the regional district. Some of you may be aware and have been on the board for a period of time that contracts were developed by the provincial government as a cost share for policing. So the communities that have over 5,000 people in them and police, and their policing cost is shared by the municipalities. The expectation is that police victim services costs will be shared by the municipalities also. So from the provincial government, I get 81,000 a year. And from the ACRD, as you know, I get 26,000 a year. On the island, most police-based victim services are equally funded by their communities. So Port Alberni has been historically lower in cost share with us. I'm asking for just under a 39% increase from 2016. The provincial government has increased our funding 53% in those last 9 years. Some of our challenges have been about wages and wage parity in the province and professional accreditation through the province. So we wanted to get our wages up to provincial level. And then another challenge for us is because of the violent crime severity index in Port Alberni, our file load has been more, since COVID has been on average more than any other police victim services. I have regional meetings and our file load is quite significant. So we are looking at maintaining what we have for staff at this point. In the future, I can see a need for more staff based on the complexity of the files we're dealing with. But right now, we're looking at an increase from the regional district to help us maintain the staffing levels we have. And that being said, if there's any questions from the board.
Thank you for that, Director Sparrow, and then Director Roth.
Thank you for that. When you're talking, you said you do like the city and the regional district. You just said Tofino and Ucluelet as well. Is also part of your.
I have a separate contract that is fully funded from the province that fully covers the contract for Tofino and Ucluelet. So when I ask for money from the regional district, it is for the Alberni Valley only.
Yeah, it is because you applied here for the Alberni Valley only, but you do the entire regional district. So if you.
But I have another worker under another contract for that.
Okay, so it's like two separate things.
Two separate things, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Director Roth.
When the police-based victim services budget is completed for the Ministry of Public Safety and Solicitor General, is there a requirement that the ACRD contribute to that budget, or is it an option? Because I know a victim services budget for community-based victims rather than police-based.
Yes,
Not a requirement.
it's not a requirement, no. And it is the wording. The wording used to be mandatory, but they couldn't enforce that. So the wording is now expected cost share. But you're right, it's not a requirement.
But it is provincially funded for the most part. police-based victim services is provincially funded?
Only for, if we only had police or only had provincial funding, then we'd only have half the ability to do the jobs we do. Yeah, it's hard because when the program was developed, you're right, community-based victim services is fully funded, and that program gets a bigger lump of money than we do. But because, and well, they used to, and yes, the expectation since it started in the 90s was that because policing is funded by the community, that police-based victim services should be. And yes, there's no legal requirement.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Director Boyko?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So my questions relate to the balance between the city and the regional district here. So you said the city is not increasing their funding very much. What did you say about that exactly?
I don't actually get I do not get money from the city. Historically, we have gone to the city and the city has put it back on the regional district.
Okay, so my follow-up question is, so the crime rate in the city itself is double the provincial average, plus or minus, and in the rural areas, it's half the provincial average. Are you seeing those kind of concentrations of crime and the use of your services more in the city than in the regional areas? Thank you.
Yes, I used to keep stats on that years ago, and definitely there is more events in the city. I no longer keep stats on where people are living, but that being said, we also, not only are we providing service to the residents of the regional district, we're also providing services to residents of the regional district who are impacted by serious crime in other locations in the world, that being other places in BC, other places in Canada, other places when they're traveling and something happens. And so, yes, but yes, my stats are not, they're focused on city location for sure.
Thank you. So just as a personal anecdote, I was offered victim services when my brother suddenly passed away. This is an Oceanside, though, so it's a separate group. But I did find that it was initially helpful. I didn't end up needing a lot of victim services because after the investigation, it was a health concern rather than something drug related or something. And so I did appreciate that it existed, and I do understand that people in Huu-ay-aht are benefiting from victim services based on, even though something may happen in the city of Port Alberni, the victims of certain crimes or those not like indirectly affected by crime, they're everywhere in the region. So this is something that maybe we need to think of from a regional perspective, understanding that the West Coast may be treated separately from an administrative perspective. That being said, I do think that it would be interesting to know what the stats are in regards to how much equivalent organizations are given in the RTN, Strathcona, the Cowichan Valley, so on and so forth, just to have a better understanding of what the standard of care is in other areas. And if we're lagging behind on that, what are the strategies that we can adopt to bring that up to snuff? I think that's something that's quite important. I don't know if you have those kinds of stats, ready. I do know that you did say that, there are other neighboring regional districts that do match in some way, shape, or form, but I don't know the arrangements between the municipalities and the regional district. Is it always a regional district that provides funding across the island?
I can speak to a few. Nanaimo is now being held by the city of Nanaimo. That contract was taken over, so they are employing their victim services now. Historically, the city and the regional district of Nanaimo had matched or exceeded the funding for the province. In Duncan, Cowichan Valley, they became part of their regional district tax base, and that's where the funds come to cost share with that program. And in Parksville, I haven't looked in the last couple of years, but prior to that, they were also under the Nanaimo Regional District. The Nanaimo Regional District matched the provincial funding for them. In Courtney, I was informed that they are matched or close to, and that I do not know if that is city or regional district for Courtney. And Courtney is held by a separate contract holder. And Campbell River has incorporated their police-based victim service position into the municipality. So the municipality is matching their provincial funding.
So a whole lot of different arrangements.
A lot of different arrangements, yes.
Are there any other comments? Dr. Roth, please go ahead.
I'm curious, if you didn't put in an amount from the ACRD in your budget to the Ministry of Solicitor General, could you request for them to make up for the shortfall?
No, I know that they would not do that. They base their, and this is a challenge, and we have an association, a police-based association, that is trying to lobby with the government for change. So I do want to say that I appreciate where the regional district is coming from, in that this should be funded fully by the province, and our provincial body is trying to lobby our provincial government for that. But they base their formula for my money based on the policing numbers. So because our detachment is a certain number of police officers, that is the only money I'm ever going to get from them. It's based on size.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Interesting that it's not linked to actual crime rates or anything like that. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, unless there are any other comments, seeing none, I'd like to thank you for your presentation, and for the first part of the presentation. I think it's very important to get the anecdotes around how this actually affects people throughout, not just 1 year, but even 3. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we have one more item left in petitions and delegations. Next up is Mr. Sam Higgs from the Sprout Lake Landing regarding their application for liquor cannabis regulation branch application. It's not specific in here. You'll have to go into more detail, Sam. So thank you and welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for offering me the time to present today. As mentioned, I'm here to offer reasoning and information in regards to our application for structural change to a liquor primary license 012367, located at 10695 Lakeshore Road, Clearcoot, BC. I'd like to first respectfully acknowledge the unceded territories of all First Nations in our Alberni Clay Court Regional District, traditional keepers of their land. We want to say thank you to you for allowing us to live and work and play on your lands. Thank you for that. As you can see, we have a diagram here that is stamped and certified by engineers. It's part of our initial application for structural change to liquor primary license 012367. If it can be noted later in my communication, area A in that particular diagram, we're asking the board to not include that in our application, and that area B, as you can see inside the diagram, is an area of focus for us, please. Thank you to the administration at ACRD, members of the board, for allowing us to present today. Our initial application of BC Liquor Cannabis Regulation Branch is requesting the area in the license be increased to include outdoor area A of that previous diagram and area B, 200 persons on the property at 10695 Lakeshore Road. Prior to the start of our application process, ACRD Building Department met with myself on the site and let us know that there was no occupancy load that they could actually offer by ACRD Building Department staff. They did note that toilets could be of a rental setup, but there could be no tie-in to septic system. This type of rental has been done by previous users on the property. BC LCRB informed Sprout Lake Landing that we needed to gain a certified architect or engineer to stamp occupancy on that site map, which we have shown you. Ziegler Architecture was retained and they calculated and stamped that occupancy number on the site that I have previously shown you. After careful consideration and in appreciation of a number of points made by members of the ACRD Board of Directors, we asked the board to not include Area A, 100 persons in the previous diagram with the license structural change application. Sprout Lake Landing is asking the ACRD Board for approval of our liquor primary structural change application noted as Area B in that previous diagram. We ask that you pass process with approval at ACRD and be forwarded through the BC EID portal to BC Liquor Cannabis Regulation Branch to continue the application process with BC LCRB. Sprout Lake Landing reduced the occupancy numbers calculated by Ziegler based on our position in the community, the events that we wish to offer local and Alberni Valley residents, as well as tourists, as well as the logistics of operating a business and staffing. Please note that at weddings and events, not everyone will be drinking. We are not in the business of promoting binge drinking, and by BC law, serving it right BC, we are not to serve to intoxication. Our liquor license is a privilege, as is our ability to offer a great product and service to local and Alberni residents, as well as tourists. A structural change application has been made due to multiple inquiries to have weddings, corporate events, retreats, and family events take place on the grassed area that was noted as Area B. We also have ongoing requests from guests of the hotel and Drinkwaters Lounge to play outdoor games such as cornhole, horseshoe, bocce with their children or grandchildren or friends while they enjoy a meal or a drink from Drinkwaters Lounge, but enjoy that grassed area noted as Area B. It's very challenging for us to actually ask guests to bring their glass of wine back into the service area when they want to play with their grandkids or with family on that open grassed area. Guests just don't understand why they can't have fun and run around that area B. We're a professional and experienced business operator. Personally, I have over 35 years experience with such brands as Cunard, Royal Caribbean International, Western, Intercontinental Hotels, and various private restaurants. Standard operating procedures of a hotel similar to ours are to attract groups to our property, use the whole facility by booking rooms and food and beverage. We have an ability to refer groups to other community businesses such as fishing charters, adventure tours, spa wellness business, shopping, and historical landmarks in the Alberni Valley. We wish to promote travel and tourism into Alberni Valley. A document that I previously forwarded to the ACRD board shows that at present we have a corporate group that have inquired about accommodation and food and beverage that is currently in process at present. We wish to work with contracted event clients. This allows us to review the type of client that we contract to. It's based on group size, the event type, is there music or entertainment at an event? Is there a start and finish time of the event? If it's something that is outdoor, music would be finished by 10 p.m. The service standards that we offer, we do not overserve. We also have a component of safe ride home contracting, such as local groups like New Line Transport or United Cabs or Alberni. When we work with a client, they're actually responsible for their guests versus a promoted event where we actually don't know who the guests are. Contracted conditions allow us to ensure that events do not pose traffic issues, noise issues, over service issues, and they contract the client to organise a safe ride home for their guests. We wish to offer and market community events such as a burger and beer night that we hosted for a community emergency service group in 2023. Weddings, due to the amazing view, there's actually no other lakeside boutique hotel on Vancouver Island that offers accommodation as well as ceremony and reception area at a lakeside property. We'd like to work with corporate retreats, wellness retreats, meeting and business training, wellness sessions that actually incorporate Alberni Valley health practitioners yoga, mobile sauna, fitness sessions, all of those with a component of breakfast, lunch, and dinner, as well as the accommodation. We would have an ability to offer culinary or food events for local and Alberni residents as well as tourists. They'd be offered during the day with great food and availability for bar service of anyone 19 plus that wanted to enjoy a drink with their meal. We do not wish to offer rave events. They disturb the neighbourhood and there is no return on investment. We do not and we will not promote binge drinking. The business model for that Area B area and our whole operation at Sprout Lake Landing is to market to local and regional community, to families, business groups, and wellness activity orientated groups. We do not, have not, and will not market to a party orientated demographic. We respect that we have neighbours and we do not wish to disturb them. Over the last 2 years, we've hosted numerous weddings as well as corporate events on our lounge. DJs have played on that lounge deck as well as inside the lounge with doors open until 10 p.m. and we have not had any noise complaints. On the 29th of June last year, 2023, we assisted a local firefighter. We hosted a burger and beer event in collaboration with a couple of gentlemen from Sprout Lake Fire Hall. During my capacity count, we had 144 guests on the site, 80 of those inside our licensed area, and 64 guests are actually in the lobby area as well as waiting outside of the car park. During that entire event, we didn't have any parking or any issues in regards to traffic at that point. We'd be using local transport companies, as mentioned, Moonlight Transport or United Cabs here in Port Alberni to reduce any use of personal cars coming to the hotel, eliminating any risk to emergency services or Sprout Lake Fire Halls and Lakeshore Road.
Can I interrupt you there?
Yeah,
We
of
have a
course.
motion to continue with the presentation. Thank you, Dr. Cote, seconded by Dr. Roth. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Please continue.
I'll be as quick as I can. Thank you. There's a great trail system that's been built alongside Lakeshore Road. It offers a really healthy method of transport for guests that would like to come to a wedding or a community event at Sprout Lake Landing by actual local residents, or if anyone is in a short-term accommodation situation. There are multiple ways to arrive to Sprout Lake Landing outside of personal cars, and we do not wish to cause traffic issues, and this is supported by our event procedures. Sprout Lake Landing, 10695 Lakeshore Road, as well as part of the land parcel that the company owns on the right side of Lakeshore Road, which is over the bridge where you're driving towards Taylor Arm, was zoned for commercial use in 1986, and the property has held a liquor license since 1974, being 50 years. The lakeside property of our closest neighbour to the south on Lakeshore Road is also zoned for commercial use. I wish to offer event services in our commercially zoned site to local and regional community families, business groups, wellness and activity orientated groups is in line with a number of points in the Sprout Lake official community plan to provide for continued social and economic growth in the area, provide diverse economy based on environmental, cultural tourism, as well as more traditional resource activities, to facilitate a wide variety of opportunities for economic activity and employment within the planned area, encourage tourism, specifically ecotourism and other economic development opportunities, support the expansion and location of highway and tourist commercial uses in the vicinity of Highway 4 and Stewart Avenue, and tourist and neighbourhood services in the West Bay area. 10695 Lakeshore Road is located in the West Bay area, and we believe that our application to have the grassed area at Sprout Lake Landing Area B licensed with occupancy of 200 persons offers the business an ability to host events in a safe manner that is respectful of our neighbours and aligns with the points noted above from the Sprout Lake official community plan. Thank you for your time, and if there's any questions, happy to help out.
Great, thank you. Could you turn off your and stop sharing just in case there's anything else? Are there any comments? I think I see Director Boyko. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to Thank you, Chair. I just want to clarify, you're modifying the thing, so area A across the road where Della's Cafe is, you're not gonna be using that, so the concerns about people walking across the road with liquor in their hands being a potential pedestrian hazard, that's gonna disappear. But you might still have traffic going back and forth due to parking restrictions, so you might have people parking there and then walking across, is that right?
Yeah, correct. There never would have been a situation where anyone would have walking backwards and forwards between the main hotel area or area B and area A. There would have been fencing in that. The reason that actually carried across the road was to ensure that the same outline or service area was continuous. We're very aware that we wouldn't have people walking backwards and forwards across the road. To further answer the question in regards to parking, there would be a situation where people would possibly at the Della's parking lot to go to an event and walk across the road and then enter through the hotel.
Thank you. Any further comments? Dr. Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Higgs, for coming and presenting. This is a big step, I think, to increase that area. So I have a couple of questions. So through the chair, can you tell me how many patrons can go on the grassed area now that covers?
So at present, where the deck is and just below the deck, there's a small gravel path. And through the COVID period, BCLRB actually offered extended or expanded service areas, but they didn't actually increase occupancy. So where that small gravel area is, has a number of big tables on it. The 86 patrons or persons that can be inside our licensed service area has to stop there. No one can go beyond that area with liquor. No, not at present. Yeah, where the picnic tables are below the deck is the perimeter of our service area at the moment.
Like,
Yeah, current deck. That's correct, sir.
so there is no allowance along the grassy area?
That is correct. Where that small gravel area is the perimeter of the service area, and beyond that, towards where the community groups such as the outriggers and whatnot do their bits and pieces. No one is allowed to have liquor in that area, and that's what we're asking: is that grassed area become licensed?
In your application here, it says that there's some grassed area that's included. So I just was asking, like, how many spots down there?
There's 5 picnic tables.
So 5
directly below the deck. Yeah.
So that's included in your 86?
In the current service area, that's correct, for 86 people.
Okay. I'd just like to say thank you for being part of the community. I think you do offer a great offering to the community for what you do offer. I'm seeing that you only have 42 parking spaces. The application, the person asking about accommodating their convention or whatever it was, they needed 46 rooms for 75 people, which you wouldn't be able to do at this time. So
yeah, that is correct, and it is in process at the moment. Being a business, obviously when an inquiry like that comes in, and as being part of the community, we might not have the room inventory to accommodate 70 people, but on the lake, there's short-term accommodation. There are other business inside Port Alberni that could benefit for that. They possibly could have in that specific grassed area, they could have a really nice dinner for 70 people, and then use New Line transportation to come and go from other accommodation areas. So we're really aware that we don't have that accommodation with the 8 rooms that we have, but I wouldn't say no to that. I'd like to work with them and see if there's a way that we can help accommodate elsewhere and have the food and beverage at our.
I really like your plan for what you've talked about with being able to offer different offerings to the community and to beyond. I do have a problem with an increase of 200 people out on the lawn. Sprout Lake, noise travels. Your plan here that actually goes right across the road. The location of this, I would love to approve it, to say I really support the expansion and what you're offering here, but I have a hard time with that 80-kilometer highway right there. I do live past this area, so I'm very aware of what the traffic is like here. Your plan A goes right across the road to B, which people would be parking across that road, and people do fly through there, and I'm sure you're very aware of what happens there. So yeah, it's concerning that an extra 200 people drinking, and I was the one that mentioned rave, because 300 people to me is a lot of people drinking right off the highway right there, when you don't have accommodations for them to get a room or taxi service or whatever service really isn't that available. I know what it's like to try and order a taxi, how long it takes. I'm sure that you could have things in place, but the amount of 200 people, I think, is a lot to ask for the community to try to accommodate. I understand that you've got provisions for porta potties, or so you won't be affecting the septic, which has been problematic in the past. I'm not saying it is now. I'm sure you fix things up, but just for the ability to have alcohol being served every weekend or is quite concerning. I know that things happen around the lake where people have weddings or gatherings where there's 100 people or whatever. That's like once in the summer. This is ongoing. I'll just leave it there. But I do really appreciate your being part of the community and what you're trying to do here. Thank you.
If I may respond to any of that, thank you. Thank you very much for your time, Director Cote, and offering that information. My apologies if some of my verbiage was incorrect or didn't pass through correctly. Area A that runs next to the Hotel Endeavours, we're requesting that is not part of the application at all. It is only Area B for the 200 people. I sent out a number of points of information to the board to have a read through, which is pretty detailed and obviously can't be presented in 10 minutes. But in that information, there are real business logistics and situations and costs that would inhibit us from doing event one weekend after the other. Just as weather can also affect it, to have a wedding on that grassed area, even if it is June or July or August, there's every possibility the client would have to tent a large area. The cost of that can be anywhere between $5,000 to $6,000 just for that tenting. So there's a number of steps and possibilities and inhibitors to actually have events run every single weekend, and we're not looking to do that. It's in a situation where those inquiries come to us, we would like to act on it. And obviously there is some marketing that would take place. We'd love to have culinary events with cultural style dinners and meals. Maybe it isn't for 200 people, maybe only 100 people arrive. And we know that not everyone's going to drink at that point in time. We just feel that would be great for the local community and members of Alberta Valley. Yeah.
Thank you. Director Cote, go ahead.
Thanks. The information that you provided really scared me when you said that you were using a consultant from Victoria that calculated the area for Area B that could non-fixed seating for 2,553 people. That's a rave to me. That's something like Phillips Brewery would do in Victoria, which is not in a residential area and has rapid transit and whatnot happening there. So when I see numbers like that you're presenting, you know, and then sort of pairing it back to 200 and 300 people, it's gives it the impression then that you have a different idea of what could happen on that property. So just giving you sort of insight of what's happening in my head. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. I would note that during your presentation, seeing those references were more in terms of contrasting what that space could be used for rather than what it's being used for now. So it actually made me feel better about what was going on. So knowing that, you know, this land could have, probably not up to 2,000 people, but like having a larger venue, doing more would be more of a risk. And we have a group that's choosing to do less and is showing that they're planning to do less. And so I think I would state that if anybody's watching this later, not to be worried about it suddenly becoming a crazy circus, but rather the plan is to be moderate in and of itself. At least that's the sense that I got. So hopefully that's something that we can take away from this. Are there any other comments? Go ahead, and then we'll go back to Director Cote.
Thank you again. I do understand that those numbers were excessive and they really are of volume. The reason that we retain Ziegler architecture out of Victoria, it was based on the information passed on to us by building staff here at CRD, that because that area is outdoors, there's no building structure, they don't have an ability to actually place an occupancy stamp because there is no structure. Having been aware of that, we informed BCLRB that the uni was not able to do that. And then they suggested that we had to retain the architectural or engineering firm to do that. We saw those numbers, and as noted, we're part of the community. We would never go anywhere near that, and so did pare down the whole operation based on what we could physically do, as well as our being part of the community.
All right, thank you. Seeing no other comments on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you for your presentation, and hopefully we'll be able to move through this in a good way. Thanks. Okay, so that brings us to item 6. There is no correspondence for action. That brings us to item 7, correspondence for information. So we have several items. Would anyone like to pull anything out or have any comment on any of these items? I did have a question just as the chair. Does anybody have any interest in the Keeping It Rural conference? Looks like there's a conversation about that. And then there's the response to all of our resolutions, but I think we're going to have to take more time to think on that. If there isn't, we could have a motion to receive the correspondence for information. Thank you, Director Roth. Thank you, Director Siga. Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Great. That brings us into item 8. So the first item, 8A, is a request for decision regarding the terminal building expansion plan for the Long Beach Airport. Jenny, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we presented this at the West Coast Committee last week in detail. We had Avia Engineering come and talk about the process that we undertook to review the available options and site plans, just the lands that are available for the terminal building, and what the pros and cons are in selecting the different options. We have settled on a green site for the new terminal development, and we've gone through detailed planning for what that looks like to meet our current needs, because we are beyond our current capacity in the terminal building, which is challenging, especially as we continue to increase in passengers. And then what we're going to need for the future as we move into continued growth and pressures on that system. The report gets into a lot of detail and I can answer any questions if you have those. But the recommendations are that we do accept the report and then also make applications for grant funding. Because the next step for this will be to work on a design project. And we think that this is going to be an excellent candidate for grant funding. Open to any questions.
Thank you. The chair would like to recognize Mr. Eric for turning on the air conditioning. Director Boyko, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a very good thing that we're having an increasing capacity, and I look forward to seeing a larger terminal there at some point. I'm glad we're having some expansion. I would love to have that kind of same positive outlook at the Alberni Airport, and hopefully we can have that sometime soon to reduce the burden on taxpayers there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Oh, Director Steer, please go ahead. You have to unmute there, Tom.
Oh, my iPad here, or my pad. I would just like to read the motion if there was no other comment.
Please go ahead.
That the ACRD Board of Directors supports the recommendations that the AVNG report has CYIZ Long Beach Airport Terminal Building Expansion Phase 1 pre-design initial assessment and direct staff to incorporate the design of a new terminal building into the 2024-2028 work plan. Is that a separate motion there?
Yeah, it's a separate motion.
Okay.
We have a second there?
Second.
Thank you, Director McEwen. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Do you want to continue, Tom?
Yeah, and that the ACRD Board of Directors direct staff to seek out grant funding opportunities for design of a new terminal building.
Do we have a second there?
Second.
Thank you, Director McEwen. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Okay, well, you might as well keep your video on, Jenny. You're up next for the West Banfield submarine line replacement contract. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, so we have issued a request for proposal for bids to work on this project. We're very excited about this. This is going to be a big project to replace the submarine line from East Banfield to West Banfield, which we continue to have challenges with. We received 2 submissions and did an evaluation of each. The highest scoring proponent was Great Pacific Engineering and Environment. And it's not noted in the report, but one of the sub-consultants working for them is Coors Engineering, which has a lot of history and experience on the Banfield water system. And so they received the highest score. They were also the lowest bid, and we feel it is a very high value for proposal. So the amount is just over $200,000 to complete the design work. They're going to be taking this to 50% design, and then we're going to be issuing a tender, which is a sort of a new process, but the intention is to get better pricing for construction. And so we'll be looking to engage a construction company in the final design of the project before we complete it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Just as the chair, I have 2 questions. So the first question is just to confirm, is this both the highest graded and the lowest bid? Well, that's great. And then the second one is going through a tender process. Is that a process that's controlled by provincial regulation, or is this internal to ACRD?
The process will be just through our procurement policy, but we're trying to do a new model. This was done for the Nanaimo, one of the major transmission main replacements that they're recently working on. And the feedback that we got from them is that they saw significant cost reductions. And with some of the big capital projects we've seen in our region, and like with the District of Tofino with their wastewater plant, we're just running into these really big challenges on escalating prices. And so we're trying to undertake this. This is actually a really good project because it's relatively straightforward. And if we can set up this new process, it basically just adds in one more step. So instead of just doing complete design upfront, and then this is the design, this is the package, now we bid it for construction. Instead, we stop at 50% design, and then we issue that out and we ask for bids on construction, and then we involve that construction company who bid it at 50% in the final design, which tends to just adjust the design so that it's less costly to build, because it is the contractors who know exactly what's going to cost a lot, and they have that expertise in the field that tends to actually create a better product for everyone all around. So we'll be still using our sort of our typical tender process. When we do that, it's not much different, but we're just adding in that middle step. I hope that answers your question.
That was really great. It definitely parallels some of the private and industrial projects that I've been involved with in terms of really addressing that cost or like the cost that could occur. It's just making sure that the work that we're doing is justifying it. So I guess this is more a question for Daniel. Is this a process that you could see being expanded throughout the organization? And it doesn't justify the time and money of doing it.
Well, yes, so I think if this pans out well, it makes sense. It's something we can duplicate more feet. And we would certainly be looking to advance it in the right areas. There's other instances where doing a complete design upfront reduces any of the uncertainty and can help control costs. So it really is case by case, but this will be our first attempt at this approach.
So like a complexity threshold or something like that. Okay, or size. Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? All right, thank you. Is anyone willing to move the motion? Director Beckett, please go ahead. Or I'll read it out since I'm already here. That the Alberni Clark Regional District Board of Directors award the West Banfield Submarine Line Replacement Engineering Contract to Great Pacific Engineering and Environment in the amount of $214,857, excluding GST, and authorize the CAO to negotiate and execute the West Banfield Submarine Line Replacement Engineering Contract on behalf of the ACRD. And so moved, Dr. Beckett. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Siga. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in, oh, go ahead, Dr. Beckett.
Yeah, I'd be remiss if I didn't identify the urgency of getting this done. You know, given the impacts on the tourism, you know, on the west side, especially, not to mention the residents there, and just how grateful I am to staff for the grant and moving this you know, forward as quickly as they possibly could. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to item C, which is for Terry, first reading of the financial plan.
Thank you. So we've had significant discussion over the last 6 weeks regarding the draft financial plan, and it's now time to turn that plan into a bylaw. So presented for you today is the financial plan bylaw, which is basically the financial portion of the overall plan for first reading. I have had meetings with many of the electoral area directors in the past couple of days, and there was kind of 2 changes that have come out of that discussion. Director Beckett for the Banfield Fire Protection area would like to reduce the tax requisition by $29,000 and reduce the contribution to capital for that service. So that is recognizing the high tax increase that's in the community and the fact that this is really just deferring that tax increase down the road. Banfield is a community that is expecting some growth, so it might just end up sharing the pot amongst more people. So that is the one. And then Director Roth, when reviewing her tax increase, has requested a reduction of similar $20,000 to the Beaver Creek Fire Protection, again, contribution to capital. So amount of funding the reserve, and that's a decrease by $20,000. So I did email out earlier today, and I think there's a few printed out around here of the proposed change to the recommendation just based on that feedback, because there's a lot of line items that need to be adjusted. So happy to answer any other questions. Oh, I guess one other thing would be is now the plan is that it comes back 2 weeks from now, and we will adopt at that time the financial plan, making any changes. If the board would like further discussion, we do have a tentative committee of the whole meeting booked for next Wednesday. We're happy to hold that if the board is wanting further discussion. Otherwise, we'll just look to adopt on the 27th.
I have Dr. Roth and then Dr. Blake. Please go ahead, Dr. Roth. Oh, really? I must have just noted you first. Okay, Director Boyko, please go ahead.
Question. There's a comment in the chat from one person that's watching and is not being answered. I don't know if we should be answering it, but it is regarding budgetary stuff for the airport. So I don't know how we should address that at this point. Thank you.
We'll address questions at the end during the question period portion, so we'll just make sure we make note of it.
Thank you.
Yourself, Dr. Boyko? Oh, it's just the chat? Okay. Dr. Roth, go ahead.
I'd just like to make the motion if there isn't any changes.
Please go ahead.
That the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors give first reading to the bylaw cited as bylaw F 1165 2024 to 2028 Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Financial Plan.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Coots.
Just 1 second.
Please go.
Were you wanting it with the adjustments?
Yeah.
Sorry, do you,
Yeah,
as amended?
please.
I think I heard as amended.
That's right, I did say that.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you, Director Coots. So moved and seconded. Any further comments? Director Sparrow, please go ahead.
Thank you. I just have one further comment about the hole in the walls in there. We have no money put towards it right now, but it's gonna come back to us again and again throughout the year, so we're gonna be readdressing that, going forward, just giving you a heads up.
Yeah, I think we're going to add this to the list of things we're going to advocate to the province on as well. This is something that's going to need all of us working together. Director Cote, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm aware that the last meeting that I didn't attend, the water committee was not approved. So I'm afraid that what's going to happen this year, as we are facing a drought crisis, is we're going to end up doing that with no funding, creating a situation where we're going to have to be meeting and there's no funding for it. So just showing my concerns.
I think that's important to note. Even if we're not going to budget something, we may want to bother the province. Could we have a letter prepared for us to send off to Walrus and maybe municipal and maybe even forests?
Yeah, so the elements of lobbying we put into general governance. But Director Cody is correct that if there is no money, it's hard for us to take action. And we do fill our staff dockets, and they all will have their operational plans following the budget. And so it simply is, if something new comes in, something else has got to come off based on timing. Or if we finish something early, then we can always talk about that. But it is important, and when it comes to something like hole in the wall, it is part of our strategic plan. But it's recognizing that our strategic plan is 4 years long, and 2024 isn't the year that we're budgeting for that one element.
Thank you. Any further comments? I feel like we should bother EMCR as well. Okay, with that in mind, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us into planning matters. 9.1 is for electoral area directors only. However, municipal and First Nations directors count towards quorum, so don't leave the building. Okay, so item 9.1A is for Bamfield. Alex, please go ahead.
Sure, thank you. And Mike and I will both introduce applications, and we'll try to keep our comments brief, recognizing the number of files we have for you and the amount of work the board has to do. This first application, though, is a rezoning application for 2 adjacent properties on the west side of Bamfield, located on Cape Field Trail and Bamfield Boardwalk. The applicants intend to rezone the properties to a mix of RA3 district and R2 district to allow for a 7-lot Fairland strata residential subdivision, with 1 lot dedicated to include a duplex for long-term rental. The Bamfield Advisory Planning Commission considered this application at their February 29th meeting, where they supported the application as presented. This housing proposal is consistent with the residential use and the mixed use policies identified in the Bamfield OCP. And the staff recommendation at this point is for the board to resolve to proceed with the public notification process and confirm that adoption of bylaw P1488 will be subject to confirmation that the development will meet all sewer, water, and parking requirements that have been identified. I'm happy to answer questions.
Director Beckett?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make the motion that the Board of Directors consider first reading of bylaw P1488 Regional District of Alberni Clayoquot Zoning Atlas Amendment bylaw at a future date, and that notice be given in accordance with Section 467 of the Local Government Act.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Cote. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Your motion carried.
Further, Mr. Chair, that the Board of Directors confirm that the adoption of bylaw P1488 is subject to A, confirmation from a registered on-site wastewater practitioner that the subject properties are capable of supporting on-site sewage disposal for the proposed development. B, meeting all service requirements for connection to the Banfield water system. C, confirmation of adequate off-street parking of 12 spaces in a location suitable to the ACRD on the east side of Banfield. And D, meeting technical referral agency requirements.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Roth. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those, Dr. Boyko, please go ahead.
Just a quick question. We're talking about a Banfield sewer septic field here. Is this going to be going on this side of the Banfield as well and getting everybody hooked up to proper sewage there? Or is this all going to stay separate fields on the west side? Thank you.
Alex, please go ahead.
I do know that the sewer is being discussed on both sides of the inlet. I know Jenny Brunn would be better to speak to this one, but the conversation is happening on both sides, and that is a separate project that is moving forward. I will highlight that the applicants have expressed an interest in connecting to a future sewer system if it is available, but in the meantime, recognize that they will need the wastewater professional report to move this application forward with on-site sewage, if that's all that's available.
Thanks for the clarification.
Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to item B, which is a Long Beach item. Alex, please go ahead.
Thank you. This is a development variance application for the placement of a mobile home on the property located at 2430 Willowbrae Road in the Millstream area of Long Beach. The variance would reduce the watercourse setback from 100 feet to 82 feet. The neighbor notification process was completed and one letter of support has been received from the public. That letter is included in your package, and staff recommend the board issue the development variance. Thanks.
Dr. Siga?
Yes, I'd like to move that the Board of Directors issue the development variance permit. DBC 23010.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Roth. Thank you, Director Roth. Any further comments? Seeing none, electoral area directors, all in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to item C, which is another Long Beach item. Please go ahead, Alex.
Yes, thank you. This is a development variance for the construction of a storage shed in the Salmon Beach area, property located at 1074 Front Street. The variance would reduce the front yard setback from 20 feet to 8 feet, which would allow for the construction of the shed to be located outside of the riparian area from the ocean. The neighbor notification process was completed and one letter of support was received from the adjacent property owner across the road right away. At this point, staff recommend the board issue development variance DPC 23011.
Dr. Siga, go ahead.
Again, the committee did consider this, and so I'd like to move that the Board of Directors issue development variance permit number DBC 23011.
Seconded by Director Roth. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. Item D, an item for Sprout Lake. Please go ahead, Alex.
Thank you. This development variance is for a property located at 9010 Lord Road at Sprout Lake. It's for the replacement of a deck attached to a house located on the Strata development. The variance would reduce the rear yard setback from 30 feet to 17 feet to allow for the deck as currently cited. Neighboring residents were notified on this application as well, and one letter of support was received. That letter is included as a late item in your package. Staff recommend that the board issue the development variance. Happy to answer questions.
Dr. Cote, go ahead.
Thank you. I move that the Board of Directors issue development variance permit DVD 23009.
Seconded by Director Roth. Thank you. Any further comments? Does anybody know if new body equipment sales is auto body or fitness? Could be either. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Okay, item E is a Beaver Creek item. Please go ahead, Alex.
Thank you very much. This is a temporary use permit renewal application for a short-term rental that's located at 5458 Highland Drive in the Beaver Creek area. This TUP was originally issued by the board in 2021 and has operated without issue since that time. The application was considered by the Beaver Creek APC at their last meeting on February 26th, where they supported the application as presented. Staff recommended the board consider issuing the TUP and direct staff to proceed with the neighbor notification process.
Go ahead, Director Roth.
I move that the Board of Directors consider issuing TUP 20004R subject to public notification as per the Local Government Acts, Section 494.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Cote. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And motion carried. Thank you. And then item F for Beaver Creek. Please go ahead, Alex.
Thank you very much. This one is a parcel frontage waiver for a property located at 6038 Kirkpatrick Road. It's associated with a 3-lot subdivision proposal. The property was rezoned by the board in 2023 to support the proposed subdivision. The proposed lot at the rear of the property would be accessed by Panhandle, and that lot does not meet the minimum 10% road frontage requirements of the Local Government Act. The Beaver Creek APC also considered this application at their last meeting, where they supported it as presented, and staff recommend that the board continue with issuing the parcel frontage waiver. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I'll move that the Board of Directors waive the 10% road frontage requirement for proposed Lot 3 as per subdivision plan of Lot A, District Lot 88, Alberni District Plan 15897.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Siga. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. All right, item G. So I'm wondering if we can have Janice put, oh, you already did. Thank you, Janice. All right, so Director Boyko is now in the waiting room. Merciless. Okay, item G for Beaver Creek. Please go ahead, Alex.
Thank you very much. This one is a rezoning application, and it's for the property at 7807 Beaver Creek Road. Bylaw P1489 would rezone a 0.3 hectare portion of this property located outside of the agricultural land reserve to RA3 district, with the intent to allow for a 2-lot subdivision. The proposed subdivision would separate the 2 houses that currently exist on the property. It would not impact the ALR lands on the north side of the lot. Beaver Creek APC again considered this application and supported it at their meeting on February 26th. The rezoning application is consistent with the residential use designation Beaver Creek OCP, and as such, staff recommend that the board proceed with the application by initiating the neighbor notification and public advertising process. Thank you.
Go ahead, Director Roth.
I move that the Board of Directors consider first reading of bylaw P1489 Regional District of Alberni Clayoquot Zoning Atlas Amendment bylaw at a future date, and that notice be given in accordance with Section 467 of the Local Government Act.
Thank you, Doris. Thank you, Director Cote, for seconding. Any further comments, Director Cote?
I have a question. Are the houses, is one of the houses on the ALR land? So this is just a two lot, or is this a 2-lot subdivision on the property that's not a ALR? Thanks.
Susan's shaking her head. Alex?
Yeah, you have the answer. So both lots are located outside of the ALR, and one lot would then be split between the ALR and non-ALR, with the house and improvements located on the non-ALR portion, and then the other lot would be entirely outside of the ALR.
So this is creating 3 lots.
No, I think
No,
there's
it's
2
only
lots.
creating 2 lots.
One of them is partly ALR. Yeah. Yeah. They did it the smart way, though. Any further comments? I guess that's subject to people's thoughts. Any? Seeing none, all those in favor? The motion carried. Thank you. Do you want to continue, Dr. Roth?
I move that the Board of Directors confirm that adoption of bylaw P1489 is subject to A, confirmation from a registered on-site wastewater practitioner that the area to be rezoned is capable of supporting on-site sewage disposal to a minimum of 0.24 hectare density, and B, meeting all technical referral agency requirements.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? The motion carried. All right, that brings us to item H. If we can bring Dr. Boyko back. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Welcome back, Dr. Boyko. We are now at item H, which is a Cherry Creek item, a TUP. Please go ahead.
Thank you. This is a temporary use permit application for a 35 site RV campground to be located at the Hollies Golf Course at 3133 Alberni Highway. The campground would allow for temporary and extended stay guests on the portion of the property located outside of the ALR. The applicants had previously operated a campground at this site with between 22 and 30 RV sites located on the property. That campground operated under a 3-year temporary use permit that was issued by the board in 2017, and that TUP authorized up to 22 RV sites. The use continued beyond the timeframe of the original TUP until the board denied the renewal application and the RVs were removed subsequently in June 2022. So the applicants have since reworked their plans and staff recommended the board consider issuing the new temporary use permit, recognizing the need for additional campground capacity within the region and the tools available within the TUP that allow the regional district to regulate this use. Along with that conditional support, staff recommend a number of conditions of approval that would be applied at the issuance of the TUP. Now, these are highlighted in depth in the report, but this would include the applicant agreeing to all of the terms outlined in the permit, the completion of the neighbor notification process, the confirmation that water, sewage disposal, and access requirements are met, a landscaping and screening plan to be provided that would primarily involve infill planting that would supplement the existing landscaping and natural vegetation along the highway and along the Arden Road corridor. That would incorporate more evergreen trees, for example, and then a small portion of solid fencing at the intersection with the end of Arden Road. And finally, that a $10,000 financial security be provided to the regional district to guarantee the performance of the terms of the permit, and that would be in accordance with the provisions of Section 496 of the Local Government Act. The Cherry Creek APC considered this application at their meeting on February 12th, where the APC supported the application as it was presented. The terms of the proposed TUP would allow the use for up to 3 years, and the board would have the option to go through a process to rescind the temporary use permit if the conditions were not satisfied. If the board proceeds with the application, staff would ensure that the public notice process is completed, and then staff would work with the applicants to ensure that all conditions of the permit are satisfied prior to the board considering the issuance of the TUP. We're happy to answer any questions on this.
Thank you. I had a question regarding to the, like, is it like an annual check-in for whether or not it's rescinded, or is it based on complaint? I just can't remember.
Yeah, it would be, staff would advise that the board follow the bylaw enforcement process. So it would be a complaint-based process that would initiate that. You know, if the board were to resolve for staff to follow up on a regular basis, we'd have the option to do that as well. But we do have the bylaw enforcement process that outlines how we manage complaints and how we deal with that.
Okay, yeah, or reactive's cheaper anyway, so. Director Cote?
Thank you. Through the chair to staff. So the applicant is providing $10,000 security to guarantee the performance. So do we hold that, or what happens with that money? Thank you.
So the act allows the regional district to require that and then hold that in a form that's suitable to the ACRE, and that would be to ensure that the conditions outlined in the permit are satisfied. If they're not satisfied, then the regional district would have the option to utilize that money to either rectify the issue or to keep that and cancel the temporary use permit or go through a process to cancel that. Now, the form that it would be accepted in would either be something like an irrevocable letter of credit, which we've done in the past, or certified check, but that would be up to the ACRD.
So at the end of 3 years, does the applicant get that money back, provided everything's A-okay?
That would be our intention, yes.
Thank you for that. Director Haggard and then Director Sparrow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I couldn't find anywhere, is this going to be short-term or long-term parking for RVs? And by short-term, we mean less than 6 months. I couldn't find that in the report.
It would be intended for extended stay guests. So it would be longer term, but there would be no restriction in the temporary use permit that would restrict one or the other. they'd have either option. I just know that the applicants have expressed an interest in having extended statements.
I just make a comment as well. I am concerned about the increase from 22 to 35 because previously the applicant could not stay within that 22. So now if we increase it to 35, does that mean it's going to be 45? So that's just my concern of just expressing.
Thank you for that. Before we go to Director Sparrow, if we'll have Director Boyko.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just have another couple, just want to get a bit more explanation about the $10,000 security credit. So I'm used to working in industries where, say, you want to drive down a road with some heavy equipment and the government owns the road, so you put down a bond so you don't destroy the road. And when you're done using it, you fix the road and you get your money back. What is this $10,000 for? That's not something they can physically destroy, that's property of the government. What are we attempting to achieve from the applicant by holding this money in trust away from the applicant? So are we trying to say that they can't add more than 35 units? I just want to elaborate on this a bit more. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the comment, Director Boyko, and the main intention with that is a tool to ensure compliance with the terms of the temporary use permit. So, that may include things like the landscaping and the screening not being satisfied, and the regional district entering into that to make sure it happens. It could be to ensure that the lots are connected to services as required by the permit, or that the maximum number of our RV sites is maintained as well. The Act does leave it open to the regional district to interpret how to use that, and the terms they use are to guarantee the performance of the terms of the permit.
Just a quick follow-up, Chair, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So basically, we're saying that our tools of bylaw enforcement are not good enough to do this particular case with this particular temporary use permit. So we're requiring something else just for this one place. Is this something that's going to be applied in future developments, or is this just a one-off based on this one particular property? Thank you.
So the regional district has the ability to apply this on other temporary use permits as well, and the board could look at a process or a policy of applying that consistently across the board, or the board may look at it on a case-by-case basis. We have used as part of the development permit issuance, there's another section of the Local Government Act that allows you to take landscaping bonds, for example, but where our typical use of that is to have the developer get a quote for the landscaping that would be satisfied in the development permit, and then we take a bond for 125% of that amount and then utilize it if needed. So there are options available to the regional district to utilize those tools.
Thank you. Dr. Sparrow?
You made me ask a whole bunch of questions now. So could this be a surety bond? Would that be acceptable? Or yeah. And secondly, if we use part of this, say we use $5 grand, 10 grand for a reason, do we make the applicant re-establish 10 grand if we go any further? Or how does that work?
It's a good financial question there. Yeah. Go ahead.
I will sort of talk about the purpose of the temporary use permit and why the provision for the bond is there is by nature it's a temporary use or a temporary zone, and so it's to ensure compliance. So if there was a situation where that bond was needed to be used by the ACRD, staff would be coming back with a report sort of outlining what's happened, the rationale, why it was used. And at that point, it would also be that the terms of the temporary use permit were not met. So the board would have to also make the decision on whether to continue on with that temporary use permit or to revoke the temporary use permit. That would be the option. So, and then at the same time, the board would also have the option to, if they were continuing the temporary use permit, to pop up the bond, for lack of a better word. But I mean, hopefully, we would not be at that. That's not. But that's what it's there for. So it's could be used while the temporary use permit is active and ongoing, but also, after the temporary use permit is done and it's not renewed, the property owner is required to bring it back to the state the property was before. And if that doesn't happen, the bond can also be used for that.
Well, they can just 30 bond, put $10,000 up with. And if they do convert it into something else, longer term, they get money back then too. Right? So when it was used at TPU, they had the bond. Okay, good, thank you.
It just might need to be liquid if we ever invoke using it. That's the thing. Dr. Cote, go ahead.
Thank you. And this is non-transferable, right?
That's correct. There's a condition in the TUP that allows the regional district to rescind temporary use permit if property sold.
Good question. Go ahead, Dr. Sparrow.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that the board of directors consider issuing the temporary use permit TUP 23003, subject to the following. A, the applicant agreeing to the proposed TUP 23003 conditions numbered 1 through 23. B, the issuance of a Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure commercial access permit for the operation of a 35 site campground and golf course. C, confirmation of a registered on-site wastewater practitioner that the sewage disposal system installed in 2019 can accommodate a 35 site campground. D, confirmation from the Cherry Creek Waterworks District that adequate community water supply can be provided for a 35 site campground. E, confirmation from Island Health that the campground water system and on-site sewage disposal system meet all the Ministry of Health requirements. F, the provision of the landscape screening in the form of vegetation, solid fencing, or a combination thereof to be satisfaction of the ACRD, along with the highway frontage and between the campground and the neighboring residential uses. G, the applicant agreeing to provide a $10,000 security to guarantee the performance of the terms of the permit as per Local Government Act Section 496. H, neighborhood notification as per Local Government Act Section 494.
Seconded by Dr. Roth. Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Oh, sorry, Director Belko, please go ahead.
Sorry, I jumped in front of you there, Bob. Quick question. How are we gonna set it? There's one sentence in here that could be interpreted with a bunch of non-legal stuff, but item F, to the satisfaction of the ACRD solid fencing. How are we gonna say that the ACRD is satisfied? And how are we gonna say, okay, that's good enough, blah, blah. And I still think the $10,000 bond it's high, and we've only applied it once, and if that's just gonna pass, which is the only first time I've ever seen it. I think we're targeting this property for some reason that I'm not seeing good reference for, but I will definitely be putting my support behind it. I just want a bit more information on the satisfaction of the ACRD. How are we gonna determine that that is good enough? Thank you.
Appreciate that comment. Yes, the staff have actually met with the property owner on site, and we've walked the perimeter that would be screened, and we've agreed on an area that the solid fencing would be located already. We've used that wording to the satisfaction of the ACRD before to allow it the flexibility rather than requiring solid fencing throughout, and to really make it more flexible and easier for the applicants to meet that requirement. When we bring this back to the board, the staff recommendation would include wording about the satisfaction of the screening and the landscaping, and we would be recommending at that time that it would be at the satisfaction of the ACRD board.
Thank you.
Any further comments or questions? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to item I. So we're just going to wait for Dr. Haggard to exit. Then we'll go into a Cherry Creek related rezoning application. Okay, go ahead, Alex.
Thank you very much. This is a rezoning application for the property at 5447 Maybell Road. The board considered this application at the February 28th meeting where second and third readings were given to bylaw P1484. The zoning bylaw amendment would rezone the property to RA3 district in order to facilitate the intended 3-lot subdivision. Following third reading, the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure has provided their approval of the bylaw under the Transportation Act, and highlighted their agency referral response has highlighted that some culvert updates will need to be done at the subdivision stage. In staff's opinion, at this point, all conditions of rezoning have now been satisfied, and staff recommend the bylaw P1484 be adopted.
Thank you. Dr. Sparrow, please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you for that. I'd like to make the motion that the bylaw P1484 Regional District of Bernice Lake Zoning Atlas Amendment bylaw be adopted.
Thank you, Director Roth. You might just want to plug it into the floor right behind you there, Daniel. Yeah. Maybe I should apply to work with George or something. Any further comments on the rezoning application? Seeing none, all those in favor? The motion carried. Thank you. Okay, so the next item is 9.2, and that'll be for all directors. Yeah, do we want to break for? Nobody smokes, do they? 5 minutes? Okay, 10 minute after, 10 after, please. Okay, now that everyone's all refreshed, now that everyone's still awake because it's nice and cold in here. Sorry, Director Johnson. We'll continue on with item 9.2. So that brings us to 9.2A. So this is for all directors, so everybody gets to vote on this. So 9.1 or 9.2A is Banfield Development Plan. Mike, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So the ACRD has received a grant to complete a development plan for Banfield, and this work will focus on the OCP area of Banfield. So kind of what Banfield's a large electoral area, but it will focus on sort of Banfield proper for the unincorporated area. And just a little bit on what the development plan is the purpose of this the development plan is to inform future official community plan development, housing needs reports, and recommendations for future planning and development applications. It will also support asset management development, cost charge development, and subdivision servicing standards. And lastly, it will inform amenity contribution policy development for growth. The plan will identify, the purpose of the plan is it will identify potential and growth potential and limitations based on existing zoning, existing Banfield OCP policies, and also physical land constraints, current servicing capacity, potable water and sewage, incorporating the sewage study that's and options or potential to connect to the Banfield sewer line, the Hawaiian or the Hawaiian sewage line, as well as identifying potential for growth through servicing upgrades, including transportation and hydro, as well as the water and sewer systems that operate. The ACRD received one proposal from Urban Systems, and I just want to note that Urban Systems is also working on the Banfield sewer line with the ACRD, so they are familiar with the work that's going on down there and already doing work. So there's some good synergies there, certainly the proposal that was submitted met the criteria for the RFP, and we recommend that the board proceed with Urban Systems, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Director Beckett, please go ahead.
Thank you. Before I move the motion, Mr. Chair, I through you to Mike. I guess the only concern I have is the fact that there was only one proposal, albeit they are working on the water line. Is there any reason for the limited interest in this RFP?
I certainly don't have any definitive answer, but there is a lot of provincially legislated work for local governments to do that we've talked about around housing, around asset management work, but also around infrastructure upgrades, etc. So I think this is going to be something we're going to see a lot of, and it's also it was a somewhat unique project in that there's overlap between the planning and the engineering components, and Urban Systems is a firm that has both planners and engineers on staff. So that made it I think that may have played a factor as well. We do have an RFP out to start the OCPs, so we'll certainly be reporting back when that closes at the end of the month, and I'm hoping hopefully on that project we'll have more proposals, but we'll have to wait and see. Sorry, hopefully that answers your question.
It does, Mike, and as you know, my wife's a planner in another community, and she was actually mentioning the challenges regarding consultants in housing. So thanks for clarifying that. And I did want to, Mr. Chair, mention that we as board of directors read scores and scores of reports. I have to say that the summary in this report was probably one of the most succinct and articulately well-written summary. And I know Mike's already alluded to the intent, but to me, it speaks to the values and benefits for the community as part of the community engagement and feedback process. And I'm thrilled to be able to make the motion that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District ACRD Board of Directors award the Banfield Development Plan Consulting Services contract to Urban Systems Limited in the amount of $99,400, excluding GST, and authorize the CAO to negotiate and execute the contract on behalf of the regional district.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Thank you, Director Cote. Any further comments? I think I'd just like to comment on behalf of the WAEP that we're happy to see the work that's being done on this, in Banfield and on the ACRD staff side of things. We want to make sure that we move through everything that WAEP is trying to do, both in our own exclusive territory and in Banfield, to make sure that we do it right. So making sure that our neighbors and friends in Banfield have the appropriate resources to do this in a good way. That's all we intend. We want to make sure that we go through an engagement process that respects the kind of internal processes of the regional district, as well as the internal relationship building that needs to happen in Banfield as well. So I just want to say that I'm happy to see that there's progress here, and thank you. Oh, Dr. Boyko, please go ahead.
You, Chair. Just a quick question. Is this is obviously just a Banfield only thing, and I just saw a bid going up for Sproul Lake. Are we going to expect this kind of consulting services to be applied for every electoral area, or what's the future plan with that? Thank you.
Sure, happy to answer that. We haven't. It's not in the work plan for other areas. This is the first of its kind that we're doing. I think there's some unique challenges in Banfield, both servicing and then the road changes. But it'll be interesting to go through and see what the outcomes are, and then certainly happy to report back to the board on if something like this would be applicable and appropriate for other electoral areas in the regional district. But again, that would be up to the board. But for now, no, it's going to just be for them. And I just, while I've got the microphone, I just wanted to also, Director Beckett mentioned the report and wanted to acknowledge that Kyle I did the heavy lifting on this report, and Indiana was certainly heavily involved in doing this, and I don't want to take credit for all the work that they've done. Thanks.
Great. Any further comments or questions? I think in terms of whether or not this is brought on by, I think this is mostly brought on by everything. This is WAEP's fault, really, in the nicest way I can put it. We're trying to do a lot in our territory, and we know that we're going to depend on our friends and neighbors and their infrastructure and capacity to help make our economic and social values move forward. So it would be my hope in the future, in the event of Batchesit or Seashot or other First Nations moving forward with their own plans, that we would be able to find the resources to back up any other electoral area that may need similar support in doing so. I think that's a principle that maybe we can stand by moving forward. So in the event that Hupatchesut wants to do something in Beaufort, like, drive a tunnel through all the way to the other side of the island, that's something that we can make sure we back up Beaufort on doing that. So go ahead, Daniel.
I will flag that in different ways we are supporting different parts of the region. So agriculture is an area, for example, of I think keen interest for Beaufort, and Beaver Creek to Cherry Creek to varying degrees, and there again we have grants looking at the appropriate planning and change and support facing climate change for those areas. So I think wherever possible, we try and find those areas, and we seek grants. When we get grants, we can accelerate the pace that we work at. And then the fallback, the default position is the absence of grants and support. Then you got us, and when we're available, we'll get to it. But certainly there's a mix, right, of interest, and some of it is broad and OCP, and some of it is more narrow and specific, as is the case for agriculture.
Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to item 9.2B, non-farm use application for an Abbott. Exciting. Please go ahead, Mike.
Yes, thank you. So the ACRD has received a referral for a non-farm use application for a poultry and rabbit abattoir. So this property is obviously within the agricultural land reserve. This application was was reviewed by the Agriculture Advisory Committee on February 27th, and the members that were present did support this application and recommendation. This is a larger property, and I want to note that the area that the applicant has proposed is well set back from the property lines and away from any neighbors. We recommend that the board support this application, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Any comments or questions, Dr. Cote?
Thank you. This did come to the Agricultural Advisory Committee, and it is supported. I did ask questions regarding the offal and whatever the waste, because there has been other farms at Sprout Lake where not on the waterfront properties, but behind, where there has been issues with E. coli entering the water system, which people that live at Sprout Lake rely on. So I did ask questions around that and feel quite assured that all problems are being addressed as far as water, E. coli reaching the lake and into water source. So just one question: if there ever did become a problem, would we ever be able to pull back on this application approval?
So this part is through the Agricultural Land Commission. Now, if they in the report, it talks about sort of the amount of on-farm versus off-farm processing they would do. So if they're intended to process more than 50% of the product through that is from other farms or off-farm, it would need either rezoning or a temporary use permit under the current zoning bylaw. So we would, I would expect staff would recommend a temporary use permit option, and would be similar to the one we had just dealt with earlier today, as far as including conditions.
So it would be iterative. We have an automatic check-in every time the temporary use permit is up.
That's correct.
And that's for the off-farm portions. They do things on-farm.
Yeah, if they do 50% or more on-farm and then bring the balance off-farm, then it's a permitted farm use and meets the zoning regulations.
Okay. Thank you. Director Boyko and then Director Sparrow.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, at the Agricultural Advisory Committee meeting, there was vast wide support for this thing. And as a person that produces food in this valley myself, I would like to have another place to get it processed in the valley and do it legally and properly. And we need more of those out there. So I wholeheartedly support this application. Thank you.
Director Sparrow?
So what would be the maximum capacity of this thing that we're running full tilt for us?
I don't know if we have the maximum for that. It'll be on the permit that they would get through the health department, and limited to the area that they have. We certainly have had. I just by way of example, we used to have in the valley a poultry processing that operated, from the 70s until a few years ago, and it was well used, and it's certainly something that was identified as really important to our agriculture plan. And just, through my information I received, people brought birds to process there from as far away as they could. So certainly, serves a need, and it's an important community, and it's really related to farm use, and tied to this supporting the agriculture, our ag plan, and allowing sort of expansion of agriculture uses within the valley.
Yeah, and overlapping capacity on the island helps when given operators have way too many birds to deal with too. So, Dr. Ross, go ahead.
While I was in school, I worked in the local abattoir, Alice Weathers Beyond, and I wanted to note that it was such a great way the way that they treated animals. There was a health inspector there every single day, and they checked every bird and everything that came out of that bird. It was really, really well done, and I'm sure that it would still be the same, if not better. I support this totally. Thank you.
Dr. Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. We did talk about the amount of animals that were on the property and what would be brought in. And it wasn't anything that was astounding. The amount of birds or rabbits or last year they had, I think they said 6 pigs on the property. You wouldn't even notice. No one noticed what they were doing on their property. It is quite a large piece, so yeah, and we absolutely do need an abattoir here. So I'm ready to.
Please go ahead.
Okay, so I would move that the Board of Directors pass a resolution to support this application for a local abattoir, noting that the ACRD recognizes the need for this type of facility to support the growth and expansion of local agriculture in the ACRD, and that the application and recommendation be forwarded to the Agricultural Land Commission.
Seconded by Director Roth. Any further comments? This is great. All right, everyone, all in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, so we're still in the part where everyone can vote, all directors. Next item is item C, liquor primary license for Spark Lake Landing. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So we've heard from the applicant, and the board had previously reviewed this application on February 28th and deferred, to allow the presentation. I do want to note that this is a referral from, so the ACRD has this as a referral from the liquor cannabis regulation or control branch. The zoning allows this assembly on the property already on the area that's identified as B. I do want to note that the medical health officer has submitted a letter in regard to this application that the directors have. I'd already mentioned that the C6 portion allows the number of guests on this property well in excess of what's proposed in your license application, and I think that's all we needed to explain, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any comments or questions, Director Roth, and then Director Cote?
I wanted to say that I support the application. The Sproat Lake Landing plan reminds me of the city-owned McLean Mill historic site. The mill hosts weddings and other events. They have a grand hall, courtyard, and deck ideal for dancing, celebrating, and enjoying meals. The mill also has an outdoor forested area where liquor is served. So it's very familiar, other than the mill not having a place to stay, which Sproat Lake Landing does have. So I support this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Cote and then Director Steer.
Thank you. At this time, I am not able to support this. I figured out the amount of space that we're talking about in B, and it's 0.6 of an acre. It's a very small piece of property for 200 people drinking on that piece of property on the waterfront, right off of a highway. I cannot support this with only 42 parking spaces, 8 rooms. We have a letter from Dr. Enns regarding health and social impacts. This is very different from McLean Mill. It's in a residential area with homes right next door. It's a very small piece of property. I do want to commend Sproat Lake Landing for all that they do offer, but I just cannot support 200 people in this application. Maybe if it was a smaller amount of people, might consider that, but at this time, I'd be making the motion. Number 1. Can I make the motion now?
I do have speakers for Boyko and Director Roth, so we can, and then Director Haggard, and then we'll come back. Okay, okay, Director Boyko, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just question a couple things here. Perhaps we could go with a lower number to make things happy. Perhaps if Sproat Lake had put in the transit system, this would be less of an issue and people could get out there more freely and have the burden of parking disappear because there's public transit provided. another thing I have is the message from Dr. Enns. She's Dr. I assume it's a she in Northern Ireland. I just wonder what relevance it has. Does she put a notice on every liquor application on Vancouver Island, or is this one specific for some reason? Thank you.
Well, if it's ENNS, that's somebody who might be pretty, it's a big family. Okay, I see you, Director Steer. Next up, I have Dr. Roth and then Haggard.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll make the motion that the ACRD Board of Directors not support the application for a structural change to the Sprout Lake Landing liquor primary license, and that the ACRD opts out of conducting a public input process.
Oh, Director Steer, I put you at the end. I have Dr. Roth up first. But yeah, I think Director Cote will get there. If it's okay?
I would, I think by point of process, I can bring that motion onto the table for this, and if it's seconded, then we can have further debate on that.
Okay, seconded by Director Cote. Was that your comment, though? Director
No,
Cote?
I.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, and I will, and if through the chair, if I could make comment.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah. And just for clarification for Director Boyko, Dr. Enns is our regional medical health officer. She is responsible for the health and well-being of our region. She has supported many of these types of applications in the Tofino and other regions. She has been also now is responsible for our area as the regional medical health officer for our particular area has moved on. And so she is now responsible for our area as well as Northern British Columbia or Northern Vancouver Island. The reason I cannot support this is directly related to the conversation that we were having around public health, and that letter that Dr. Enns did submit to the board. She does have the ability to comment on public health and safety matters in our region. And I will just like to say, as much as I appreciated the applicant's presentation, that model is the model that the alcohol industry does employ to promote the sale and consumption of alcohol, which is a class 1 carcinogen in our area. So from a public health and safety perspective, the data is very clear that increased accessibility to alcohol and availability does promote and has detrimental impacts to public health and safety in this area. Public policy recommendations, as is indicated from our medical health officer, clearly indicates that this would not be in the community's best interest. And that is what we are tasked to do with this particular referral to the LCRB, is to look at what in the well-being of our community. And if this application supports that, it is clearly, in my opinion, that it does not support that community well-being. And I'll leave it there.
All right, thank you. We'll just go back to the original speaker list. I have Dr. Roth and then Haggard and then Cote. So Dr. Roth, go ahead.
I would like to say that, being that I mentioned that their application reminds me of McLean Mill, I'd like to note that McLean Mill has no neighbors right beside where they hold these events, and I don't ever hear complaints. I live very close to it too, and there isn't a problem. I'd also like to note that BC Ferries offers liquor on board. Why isn't the health officer doing something about that? You can drive onto a ferry, off a ferry. You got alcohol there, like it's part of our life.
Thank you. Director Haggard and then Director Cote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. From a tourism point of view, I think the more attraction services we can offer to our visitors, the better. We need more people coming to our community. From an economic standpoint, these kinds of large events generate a lot of economic activity for small businesses in our community. Sprout Lake Landing is located in a very beautiful and unique setting that would be very suitable for weddings and family reunions and corporate events. I think the applicant also has a good plan to mitigate any concerns that have been expressed today. So I will be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Director. You won't be supporting? You will be. The motion is to deny. So I'm just confused. Sorry.
I will be supporting that they go ahead. So
Okay.
I won't be supporting the motion.
All right, thank you. Director Cote, please go ahead. And then I have Director Boyko and then Dr. Steer.
Thank you. I'm sure that we all at this table want to help our local economy and businesses going forward. I just don't see that this is the correct application for this property. I would love to. I'm just like everybody else around here. I enjoy a glass of wine and dinner and the beautiful location of Sprout Lake. But we have to remember that also it is a residential area. And alcohol abuse is something that happens quite regularly at Sprout Lake, from my perspective. And I think that we need to respect the neighborhoods, the people that live in the area. They also sell, they have a store there where people would come with their boats and walk across the road. And our roads are absolutely terrifying in the summer because of traffic, and people are excited to be at the lake and traveling along, coming off of an 80-kilometer highway onto right there at that location, across a narrow bridge that shouldn't really be as narrow as it is. Trails are non-existent as soon as you go past the Sprout Lake Landing. So people are on the road with their bikes, with their strollers, walking continually, and it's very scary for residents that live out there. So having 200 extra on top of the 86 people that are outside on just over half an acre is very irresponsible, I think, in my opinion, with a letter coming from Dr. Enns and just imagining what the effects of having continuous offerings. I think that if there was a application with less people, might be more acceptable, just because I could see them expanding a bit, but 200 people outside is a lot, plus the 86. So I'm supporting the recommendation to not approve. Thank you.
The option to not approve. Thank you. Next up, I have Dr. Boyko and then Dr. Steer.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say thank you to Director Steer for letting me know the background and the doctor. My main question was why she was sending a letter specifically to this business and whether this happens on every alcohol application on Vancouver Island. Then the provincial government supports decriminalization of opiates, cocaine, methamphetamines, MDMA as of 2.5 months ago. But now we're cracking down on alcohol. So I just see it as something we don't really want to get into and discuss here at a regional level. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Steer, you're up next.
Yeah, and before I can respond to Director Boyko's. It is fairly customary. This is Dr. Enns' comment on at least 3 liquor primary application processes in the District of Tofino. This is something that is fairly common for medical health officers to do within communities. So the question of why it comes out is identified in the report and is clearly been identified on a number of occasions through our medical health officers through presentations to the District of Tofino, and unfortunately that hasn't happened for the ACRD. Alcohol has been identified in the report as the #1 public health and safety issue in our region, exponentially so in the ACRD as opposed to all other areas of the province. Our increased levels and all the results that happen through there. What we also did not receive was information from the RCMP, which we often have at the District of Tofino on these licenses, which clearly indicates increased accessibility and availability leads to increased amounts of alcohol-related issues, bar none. So this is why this type of information comes forward from our medical health officers, specifically in our region, because it is the #1 public health and safety tenfold over opiates, even tobacco, it is more intrusive than. So that is why we cannot, as a group, this is just a referral to the LCRB. They already have the ability to serve 86 patrons at their location. So the increasing availability and access has clear deferential issues with it. And in terms of how it impacts, we often have the conversations between public health issues and the economy. But if you look at the report, and if you can go into the BC report on this, we are in a net deficit situation in terms of the revenues we receive from alcohol and the expenditures at the cost of public health and safety. We are in net, as of 2021, $750 million net deficit in terms of revenues and expenditures directly related to alcohol. I can't provide that data if you would like at any time. So that is why I cannot support this referral going forward, and I stand by the motion that's on the floor.
Okay, thank you. Director Cote, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to point out that I don't know of any other facilities that actually have outdoor liquor accommodation. Maybe a couple of tables, but I'm not aware of any in Port Alberni. And I would look to the West Coast. I don't think there's any there either. I've attended many facilities where there's food and alcohol inside, there's activities, conventions, whatever else, but it does not go outside the doors. So I'm not aware of any. Thanks.
Director Steer, go ahead.
Sorry, I can just quickly comment on that. What applicants do have the ability to do, and has often been the case for special events, is that they can apply to the LCRB for special event permits, which would allow them to hold events such as weddings and other things. Certainly in the District of Tofino, we have a municipal alcohol that regulates and has a very extensive checklist for serving alcohol on district-owned properties. For private events, they can also apply through the LCRB for special event permits.
Dr. Roth, did you have a comment? No? Okay, so I think I'm going to cap this off by reiterating that the motion that's being put forward is to deny the application. And so voting yes means that you're not for this application moving forward. I just weighing in personally, this doesn't feel like it's about like everything that's been mentioned. This just feels like it's about stopping any increase in activity in the Sprout Lake Landing area, and that this is the second time that it feels like the goalposts have moved. So I do think that we should be doing something, but to somehow pretend that all we have to do is reduce the number moving forward, well, what's the difference between 200 and 100? What's the difference between 150? And then suddenly we're 3 years in the future. I respect and understand the difficulties that people have with alcohol and serving alcohol. My community is affected by it. At the same time, however, it is not a substance that is going to be controlled in the same way. And people do, once they come of age, are able to choose for themselves whether to what degree they partake. I would note as well that the application is for up to a certain amount. It's not like it's going to be a 200-person party every day. That being said, I think I'm supportive of this project moving forward, so I'll be voting no on the motion. And I would expect that everyone just be clear that the motion is, if you vote for it, you're against the application. If you vote against it, you're something else. All right, thank you. Oh, Director Ross, go ahead.
Could we please have a recorded vote?
Okay, should we? Okay, when we vote. Okay, great. Director Steer, go ahead.
Yeah, through Chair, I just respectfully, this is as a referral to the LCRB. Once that referral is made, that it's still up to the LCRB to have a conversation whether it will be accepted or not.
All right, thank you for that clarification. Are there any other comments? Okay. Seeing none, all of those in favor of denying the application, please raise your hand and I'll read out your names. Okay. So we have Director Cote and Director Johnson. And then online we have Director Steer and Director Beck. Okay, that's it. Thank you. Okay, all those not in favor. All opposed? Okay, those of us in the room, Director McEwen, Director Roth, Director Sparrow, Director Coots, Director Haggard, and myself. Online, we have Director Mastrangelo, Director Minions, and Director Boyko. I didn't keep number, but it's 4. And how many? However many that is. 10. Thank you. All right. So the motion has been defeated. Yes. So the motion on the floor has been defeated. So we will, at the very least, not deny it, but that doesn't mean we're going to do anything. Technically. Director Haggard, go ahead.
Do we need the motion now to accept the application?
Yeah, unless we want to do nothing.
Can I make the motion to accept the application? I'll read it.
Let's read it out. Just make
I'll move that the Board of Directors support the application for a structural change to the Sprout Lake Landing liquor primary license to expand the licensing to the lakefront outdoor area zone C6 to allow for an additional site capacity of 200 persons and to resolve the ACRD opts out of conducting a public input process.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Roth. Okay, any further comments? Director Cote? And then Director Steer.
Thank you. I'm not in favor of this. I think that it's sending the wrong message to the community and not in all due respect to our chair, it's not just something against this establishment. The community is happy that they're here and we want to support them, just not in this manner. 200 people is too many. It's wrong. I don't think that alcohol should really be outside of the doors the way that they have been. And there's also the fact that there's nothing saying that tomorrow this establishment isn't sold to someone else who has a different idea of how they're going to run it. So thank you.
Thank you for that. And Director Steer, please go ahead.
Yes, and I think I've clearly indicated the public health and safety implications of these types of access and availability. The data is clear. There's no question about it that it will have public health and safety at a population level. This is just one of many. I will also refer to the board that the purpose of the referral process is to clearly indicate as if this is in the community's best interest. And I think you really should take that to heart. You're hearing from the electoral director who is clearly indicating that her belief is that this is not appropriate for her area. And I'm approaching it from a much larger perspective. I think we really need to take into consideration the fact that your electoral area has clearly indicated that this is not an appropriate application for her area. And I think we should be supporting her in that.
Thank you, Director Steer. Any further comments? Director Cote?
Thank you. There is another restaurant, the Fish and Duck on the lake. They do have a deck and their alcohol has to stay within that area. So there is another example at the lake. This is not a one and only offering that we have. So just keeping that also in mind that they're not applying for a 200 outdoor license. Yeah, and they have a much larger piece of property. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any further comments? Okay. Seeing no more comments, all those in favor of the second motion in favor, please raise your hand. Okay. All opposed? Okay, looks like it's 5-4, motion carried. Okay, would anyone like to? No? Okay. Motion carried, thank you. All right, that brings us into item D, which is a notice on title. Alex, right? Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. This one is a notice on title for a property on Chia Island in Barclay Sound. Cabin was built on this property with no inspection from the ACRD building inspector. A building permit was first issued for this cabin in 2019, and the cabin was subsequently built without satisfying many of the conditions outlined in the permit. This file was considered by the board in March 2023, so last year, where additional information was received from the applicant and a decision was deferred by the board at that meeting. Over the past year, the building inspector has provided opportunities for the property owner to achieve compliance with the building permit requirements, and no progress has been made to date. A final letter was sent to the owner on February 14th, notifying them of the intent to bring the contravention to the board with the recommendation that the board place a notice on title. Happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. Director Beckett?
I'd like to make the motion that the Board of Directors registers a notice on title to Lot K, District Lot 682, Clayoquot District, Plan EPP 24389, as per Section 57 of the Community Charter.
Seconded by Director Cote. Okay, any further comments? Director Sparrow, go ahead.
Thank you. I was reading through the letter he gave back for reasons, and he said he either supervised or partially installed the electrical fixtures, except the panel work is done by electrician. So how they pull a permit for electrical if they didn't, or is that one also not been pulled?
Yeah, thank you for that. We have highlighted in the report that they do not have the required approvals from Technical Safety BC for both the electrical and the gas as well. So that would be an additional concern of the building inspector.
Would that be covered off later then?
So the Technical Safety BC authority is a separate authority that regulates electrical work on all of our permits. Part of the building permit condition process is to ensure that's been satisfied. So the building inspector's in regular contact with Technical Safety BC, and I can follow up with him to make sure that they let them know that there's an issue here, but I imagine that work's been done.
Okay, yeah, I just wasn't sure if anything actively needed to happen. Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. All right, that brings us to item E, another notice on title. Please go ahead, Alex.
Yes, thank you. This is for another property on Chia Island. In this circumstance, a deck was constructed in contravention to the requirements of the building permit that was issued in 2020. The 1,400 square foot deck is much larger than the 500 square foot deck that was authorized under the permit, and the placement of the deck does appear to conflict with the front yard setback and with the covenant that's registered on the title. Notification of the property owner that the notice on title process actually began last year in February 2023, and most recently letters were sent on January 31st and February 27th this year. To date, the property owner has not provided any additional correspondence to the regional district, and staff recommend that the board resolve to place the notice on title. Thank you.
Director Haggard, please go ahead.
I'd like to ask staff, is there anything stronger that we can do in the meantime, like such as putting fines, or I think we need to have a stronger voice to show people they can't just do whatever they want.
I would think notice on title would be a good first step. Mike, what do you think?
Yes, that notice on title is a first step. The next option for the ACRD would be to proceed with legal action and an injunction to have a court order that the property owner remedied that. The purpose of the notice on title is to identify what says on title for future owners, and it is also something that we've been advised by our legal counsel that it is an appropriate step so that we have this in place. We certainly can proceed with others. It becomes very costly to do that, but this notice will stay on until it's remedied, regardless of property ownership, etc. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you, Director Beckett.
Thank you. Just before I make the motion, I would like to follow up to Director Haggard's comments. I don't disagree. My concern is that by registering, putting a notice on title is great, but it could be some time before a property is sold, and I wouldn't want folks in our community to think that they can do whatever they want. Albeit having something registered on title and that they're not accountable. So it's just a comment. I think it's something that we do need to reflect on. Having said that, I'd like to make the motion that the board of directors registers a notice on title to Lot E, District Lot 682, Clayoquot District Plan EPP 24389 as per section 57 of the community charter.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Cote. Director Sparrow, go ahead.
Thank you for that. So it looks like they had the permit didn't work. They made the permit smaller to make it work what we wanted. They built the deck anyway. So what they wanted. And now they're going like, what are you gonna do about it? You really look at what's being said here. So it seems like they're almost forcing our hand to do something because they know that we do a lot of variance permits. We did about 3 today already. So they decided to build what they wanted to build, and hopefully they get away with it. That's what it looks like to me by doing this the way they're doing it. So we have to do something to say, no, it doesn't work that way. Right now, we're letting them do what they want to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Sparrow. I think you're both you and Director Beckett have raised good points in regards to how we deal with the whole "it is better to ask forgiveness than permission" kind of attitude that we have. That being said, we have to balance that with the cost of kind of more active processes in regards to this. I think we might have to revisit how policy is constructed so that we all know how this is going to work and what it's going to cost. Is this something that staff could come back in good time, not like next meeting or anything, with what other jurisdictions may do in regards to these kinds of problems, so that we're not always doing not just notices on title, but going in camera for legal action? Are there ways that we can dissuade it as well? Thank you.
Yes, there are. And I know that Mike has something to say on that matter, but I will add before Mike jumps in as well that nothing prevents the board from asking that we bring situations like this, Section 57s, back periodically to the board to review. If nothing has improved, if there is still the existing activity going on, then we can always shift in camera and do an assessment and make decisions on how to advance with some of these Section 57s. I think Mike has something more, if I can hand it over, Chair.
Please go ahead. Thank you for attending, Director Steer.
Yes, and certainly we can bring back the bylaw enforcement policy and the work plan for this year is later in the year to look at the building bylaw as well and make some other changes, so we can look at the enforcement components of the building bylaw as well. So these do relate both to the enforcement, especially around zoning and building, and we can bring that back and the board can consider some policy options and changes. And as Director Haggard mentioned, there is also some fines and ticketing options that the board currently doesn't, that the HRD currently doesn't have regarding building that could be looked at as well. So we will we'll bring that back to the board later in the year if that's something you'd like to see.
Okay, I don't know that we need a motion to do that as long as it just gets on an agenda.
If you can make it a motion that way, because we track the motions, and then if we forget as we're going over, Heather will remind us that there's an outstanding motion, we have an action, and we'll bring back Section 57s for discussion to the board.
Can you work on what that may be while we go through the votes on this motion? All right, thank you. All right. Okay, any further comments on the original motion for notice on title? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, so now if we could have a motion that just kind of establishes a report to be given back.
Sure. Thank you.
I would just suggest that the board pass a motion that the board directs staff to bring back a report in 2024 outlining options for both the bylaw enforcement policy and the building bylaw regarding enforcement and fine options.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Director Haggard. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Sparrow. 2024, that's plenty of time. Thank you. That's good too. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. Okay, that's great. That brings us into item 10.1, our area reports. So that brings us into each of the electoral areas and districts and First Nations. So first up is 10.1A, Electoral Area A, Banfield. Director Beckett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's lots happening in Banfield these days. Lots of good news with respect to tourism and people looking forward to the nice weather coming. There's a number of projects and processes that are in place, including the Banfield Sewage Connection project, the proposed project. We've learned today a little bit about the Banfield Development Plan that will feed into helping to form and advise on the official community plan review. And next Monday, Daniel and I are teaming up to do a presentation to the Banfield Community Affairs Society to discuss engagement processes, providing current, factual, and relative information on a number of subject matters, including some of the project processes. And I'm looking forward to Monday night's presentation with Daniel. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Next up is Beaufort. Director Boyko.
Thank you, Chair. As opposed to Banfield, Beaufort is nice and quiet, and we like to keep it that way. Everything's still dormant. There's little plants coming out of the ground right now. This beautiful weather coming up. More importantly, people are concerned about tax increases and making sure we're nice and clear on what kind of tax increases we are proposing. And when it comes out publicly, not just a small dollar amount, because we don't really care about that. We want percentages and average dollars amount. Make sure it's very obvious of what's happening in every area. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that. Next up is Electoral Area C, Long Beach. Director Siga.
Thank you. Nothing new to report. We're looking forward to getting progressing along the OCP, and that's all. Thanks.
Electoral Area D, Sprout Lake. Director Cote.
Thank you. The Sprout Lake Community Association had a meeting on Monday with their new president, Tamara Thorpe. For my community, I am assisting with paying for some funding for AED training for the community, which will be happening on March 21st, Thursday, at the community hall. We're looking at other training sessions also coming in the future. So, thanks.
Thank you for that. Next up is Electoral Area E, Beaver Creek. Director Ross.
Thank you. Basically, right now, we're doing some research to look at numbers of working for in Beaver Creek. So hopefully I'll come back in the next month or two. It's kind of important to, that's an area that often gets left out, especially when we're talking about taxation. And other than that, Creekers are pretty quiet right now, just like Beaufort.
Thank you. And next up is Electoral Area F, Cherry Creek. Director Sparrow.
Well, we might be Creek or Beaufort, aren't we? Tomorrow, there's going to be a presentation given by the consultant for the conversion study between the Water Board and the ACRD, 7 o'clock at Cherry Creek Hall. The study then should be available on the ACRD website, I've been told, and there will be a survey brought out after that, both online and a written portion, like so you can get yours from probably the Water Board office or here, fill out. So see what they want to do in the future, whether they want to go to a referendum or not. So I ask anybody that wants to be there tomorrow night to listen to what he has to say, because it's going to affect Cherry Creek for the next 20 to 30 years. So, thank you.
Thank you for that. Next up is item G, City of Port Alberni. Director Minions, you want to go first? And then we'll go to Director Haggard.
I'll defer to Director Haggard. Thanks.
Director Haggard, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, the city, like everyone else, is trying to finalize their budgets. So we've gotten it down to 11-something%. So it started out pretty high, but I don't know if there's going to be any other major cuts. So that's about as far down as we can go. Our largest increases are due to the library board and our protective services contracts. And those are things we have no control over. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up is District of Tofino. Dr. Steer is not available. He had to leave at 4 o'clock. Item I is District of Ucluelet. Dr. McEwen.
Thank you. Yes, we're just finalizing our budget process as well. Terry Fong was at our regular council meeting via Zoom yesterday to give a presentation on the ACRD budget and how it affects UCLA. So that was helpful. Thank you. And our public open house is tomorrow evening from 5 to 7. So that'll be interesting to see who comes out to that.
Thank you for that. Next up is myself. So on a report for the Huu-ay First Nations, Huu-ay is in the midst of its own budgeting process. So we're going to bring back certain items, especially grants and aid, to the Huu-ay budget process. So we may be coming in and matching probably Banfield in regards to what we may contribute to. In addition to that, we're going to have some discussions around coordinating, planning, that sort of thing. I think the most salient thing that's going on in regards to the regional district is the work that we're doing with Forum Asset Management and on something called the master planning process. So online, it's the Huu-ay Framework Plan, which is a plan to figure out what it is Huu-ay wants to do in its own territory, as well as the private lands that we own in the Banfield area. So we're looking to develop those lands in ways that make sense, but we want to do it in a way that's culturally and geographically and community sensitive in regards to taking advantage of the opportunities presented by the advent of the road and our focus on diversifying our economy in places that aren't just resource extraction based. So this is something that we're going to take the rest of the year to embark on. This is something that we want to engage with not only Huu-ay citizens and Auckland residents, but also Banfield residents as well, because this is a unified local economy approach that we want to take and make sure that everyone's brought along the way and that there are no surprises. I'm happy to say that I think we're definitely on that track. I just want to make sure that we stay on that track to do right by our neighbors. I'll leave it at that for now. We're also securing funding for the completion of the Imixu Mother Center, which is something that's going on in the city of Port Alberni area. We see this as being something that's very key to one of our strategic plan items, which is helping to create a safer and healthier community for all Huu-ay. The Mother Center is modeled on the Vancouver Mother Center, or East Vancouver Mother Center, where it's a safe place for mothers who are fleeing domestic violence in bad situations so that they can really make a better life for themselves away from difficult power structures, especially in local, small communities and small families, where sometimes the dominant folks who are making it so that mothers with children can't escape bad situations, presenting further opportunities for those people to escape those situations and land on their feet, is how we're going to create more and better opportunities for Huu-ay children and youth moving forward. So we're happy to work with the province as well as the city of Port Alberni on making sure that this is done in a good way. And we're taking a lot of inspiration from organizations like Sage Haven just to see the work that they've done in the local area too. These are the types of things we want to contribute to. And we often see the city of Port Alberni in the Alberni Valley. It's kind of a central location for all New Toronto people, including Huu-ay citizens. So it's something that we'll continue to invest in. I'll leave it at that. Thank you. Next up, we have a report from Tokwat. Director Johnson, please go ahead.
Thanks. We are also doing our annual budget. We have a People's Assembly next weekend to go over it with our citizens. We are close to getting a new director of operations, and I think that's it for now. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up is Hutchupalsit Tribe Government, Dr. Kuntz.
Thank you, Chair. Hutchupalsit is also in the processes of their budget. We are coming close to getting to an end. We also have our People's Assembly coming up this month. I believe it's on the 23rd. Don't quote me on that. I'll double check. And as for that, we are looking forward to being in our public engagement setting for the Redford housing that is being put in our property. We are still kind of in the midst of the large structural planning, design, that's so on and so forth in that regard. I did bring that up one of the last times, but we're still in, as I said, public engagement for that. We're doing a lot of internal working, figuring out our plans and what are your plans look forward to in the future, and a lot of internal things that aren't quite public just yet. So I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Well, we'll keep watch. Next up is the Klufeldot government. Director Mr. please go ahead.
So 2 updates. We actually did pass our budget. So there's some success on that. And we do have a change with our director of operations, and we rescinded that agreement, and our current acting director of operations is John Rankin, and we'll be on working with the hiring company to find a new suitable director of operations, and that's pretty much it for now. Thanks.
Thank you. John's the one with the hair, right? The long hair? Yeah. Okay. Just trying to remember. Yeah. Okay. Could we have a motion to receive the reports, please? Thank you, everyone. Director Roth and Director Coots. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? The motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to item 11. There is no unfinished business. Item 12, there's no late business, but I think we have a question period question. Heather?
Yeah, so we don't have any responses received by email, but I do have a couple questions in Zoom, so I'll read them out. What did the Port Alberni Airport cost to operate in 2023? What did the airport generate for revenue in 2023? And what is being done to correct the problem of this continuous loss of money? Yes, so sorry, that was Mike Lesowski. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe, Jenny, you've prepared answers for this. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, those are great questions. So the financial plan was also presented and is open to the public, so all this information is in there. But I will drill into it a little bit. When we look at what our costs are at AVRA, we have a few things. One of them is debt, because we have a very large capital debt. So the debt amount in 2023 was just over $300,000. We also have a capital investment that we're putting in so that we can look at expansion as well as the equipment building and important capital expansion projects. So that's just over $260,000. We also have fuel on site, so there's $100,000 in cost to that, but we also have revenues. And the operating costs are just under $200,000, $193,000. So then when it comes to what the revenues are, we've seen increasing revenues because we've done a market rate assessment and updated our lease rates. So we have lease rates in 2023 of just over $130,000. That's our revenues there. Our fuel revenues are $120,000, and tax requisition is $642,000. So moving forward, the proposed tax requisition for the service, as we talked about recently, is suggested to be flat. So we have not recommended an increase. We actually anticipate, but we want to wait and see how our lease revenues and additional interest in the site goes. So we do anticipate to see increased revenues. For the last question, what we're doing is we do have a AVRA committee that meets quarterly, and we have completed a strategic plan for the airport. We're working with the committee to implement some of those initiatives. One of them, as I mentioned, is market rate increase and adjusting that. We have ongoing interest in new lease areas and applications, and so we're working with different interested parties. And long term, we will be looking to expand and focus on industrial and air-related activities at the airport.
Okay, thank you for that. Director Boyko, please go ahead.
I just want to see if I can get some clarification on the cost there. So I'm just looking at the budget here. Expenses 2023 actual 877,000 total. Revenue is basically, I'm going to say 230,000. So tax requisition, the difference that we're getting from the taxpayers to pay for AVRA last year was 642,000. Is that not correct?
Tax requisition, 642,000 last year.
Right. So I just want to make sure. So 877 costs, 230 plus or minus revenue and costs directly to the ACRD taxpayer, 642. And it's proposed that that's going to stay fairly flat for a little bit for the next couple of years, according to this budget. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, do we have to receive the answer to the question? This is the first time we've had to deal with it. No? Okay, we don't. Okay. All right, so with that, we can move into a recess for the hospital district meeting. We have a motion to do so, please. Thank you, Director Roth, seconded by Director Coots. All those in favor? Motion carried, thank you. Oh, sorry, Director Spera. Oh, sorry. Okay, I didn't see that you wanted to have any comments, so if you would please approach the thing and hit that red button thing.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Heather. I'm from the Hollies Golf Course, and I just wanted to say I appreciate everybody's vote in our confidence to move forward with the application today. I did have a concern about the $10,000 bond, and it's because of my reading of what the Local Government Act actually says, specifically about the having a bond. And if I may read that out to everybody, just so that we're on the same page, that the bond does actually have to be very specific because we have 23 conditions. My concern is actually that, for instance, one of the conditions in there is that RVs have to be parked 5 meters apart from each other. What if somebody comes in one night and they're parked 4.5 meters? We're in contravention of what is required by the requirements of the 23 conditions. How is that going to apply with the $10,000? So in the Local Government Act, and just because it was 496, which was actually quoted in the letter, and you'll have to excuse me, everybody, I only actually got to see this document late last night that I realized that the document was on the website. I haven't actually got an email about what was going to be presented today. So let me just get here. Okay, under the Local Government Act, it says permit conditions, additional security requirements, and it says 496, section 1. In addition to any security required under section 502, a local government may require a condition of issuing a temporary permit use that the owner of the land give up to the local government security to guarantee the performance. I'm sorry. And then it specifies if there's a requirement for security under the subsection 1, the permit may provide for the form of the security and the means of determining when there is a default under the permit and the amount of security that forfeits to the local government in the event of default. So that's 496, section 1 and 2. Now, if I go to 502 of the Local Government Act, it's much more specific again. So in that 5.2 of the Local Government Act, it does state things like the fact that if landscaping wasn't dealt with, then in the landscaping, the local government could then use the amount of money determined for landscaping to actually do the landscaping on your behalf. So the $10,000 bond isn't meant to be a penalty, which is kind of how I'm feeling, because it is the only time that you guys have actually ever approved something like a bond like this to anybody else. So I do feel really special that I'm the first one. But in the Local Government Act, it's really specific, and it has to be really specific because it's not general at all. It's not, well, if they don't remove this, then we can use the money for that. Well, if they don't put up the fence, well, then we can use the money for that. If they don't do this, it's not like that in the Local Government Act. It's actually very specific. And what I would like is to have real clarity about that. That's a lot of money that I'm putting out. And I need to know very specifically that, okay, well, Heather, if you have an RV that's parked too close to another RV, well, is that $100 fine? And then, we're talking top-ups. It's kind of getting a little bit crazy when I know by law enforcement, that is what the role of by law enforcement is for. And I'm, with greatest respect, I'm just asking that I think that this needs to be very clarified. So if we're dealing with a landscape bond, then absolutely, Alex and I did have the conversation that we would look at how much the cost would be for landscaping after coming onto the property. So then very specifically, if landscaping is going to be $2,000, then we need to know that there's a $2,000 bond available for landscaping. And if I don't commit and I don't do that landscaping, then I totally understand that the ACRD can take my $2,000 and complete that landscaping for me. But right now, as it stands, there's nothing. And you're asking for $10,000 bond, which you've never asked from anybody else. I've never had a safety issue on this property. I've never had any contraventions with the bylaw, other than the fact that we put in 5 people on our property during COVID. So this seems to be coming up, and I'm really trying to move forward beyond this, but I do feel that because I never received this documentation in advance, it's a complete surprise. It's taken us over a year to get here for a temporary use. And now when we get here, the only 4 things that we're dealing with are a landscape thing and a bond. It's basically whatever you can think of. I get there's only 4 things. There's like septic, there's landscaping, there's an MOTI referral, and then there's fire chief. There's 4 things. It's taken us a year to get here. I had a great meeting, I thought, with Daniel yesterday, and I really respect and am appreciative of that meeting. But I was completely taken aback when I finally got this documentation a few hours before coming to this meeting today, because there's nothing. We didn't get it ahead of time. There was no chance to talk to staff, planning staff, to say, hey, about this $10,000, what are the specifications? How is this going to be outlined?
Thank you for that. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess a couple of points. So this is the first step in a 2-part process of a development application that's before the board. So the conditions are, specifically around the $10,000 security bond, the applicant agreeing. So we're at the stage where the applicant has to agree to this bond, as a condition. Certainly, if there's concerns about this, I would recommend that that you put this in writing. There's part of a public notification process. Everything has to come back to the board, and then the board has to make a final decision on proceeding with the temporary use permit or not at a future board meeting. So I think the best process, if there's concerns that are laid out in here, that you should be putting them in writing and making that a part of the information that comes back to the board before the board makes a final decision. So, and that's the normal process we do in all kinds of development applications, especially where there's conditions. That's sort of the typical process. And certainly, I wasn't at the Advisory Planning Commission, but I understand that this was presented at the Advisory Planning Commission, as well as staff have met on site with you to go over this. So, but again, if there's concerns and there's things in here that you don't want or don't agree, I think that should be put in writing, and then all of the information and staff can prepare a report that comes back to the board.
If I may,
Wait.
sir. Oh, yes, sir.
So I think we can agree that there's still time to respond to these things. And as a result, we would look forward to any written response that you send, because the board will be able to see it. And so if you want to respond to each of the conditions or specific to the items around a bond and the things that may be connected to it, asking for clarification works as well. You might be able to get that answer sooner than later, and then provide an official response that can be considered by the board once we actually decide. So rather than belabor the point of not feeling like you have enough time to respond, the answer is that you do. And that what we can do is make sure that when we have this conversation, that enough of the discussion has happened ahead of time so that nothing is particularly surprising. So please go ahead.
My concern is actually the biggest concern that I have is that under the Local Government Act, you're not allowed to do a $10,000 bond like that and have it be ambiguous. It's very specifically laid out under those two sections of the Local Government Act. So you're not allowed to have an ambiguous bond for that any kind of money. Actually, it has to be a tit for tat in that way. So like I said, it has to be something that the board or the planning department is able to rectify with that money. And I'm prepared to put it in writing, no problem at all. I'm just bringing it to the board's attention that planning has brought to you something in this documentation that legally they couldn't do. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, with that in mind, I think that's the end of the question period, unless there are any emails that actually came in. I don't know if we checked. No, there wasn't, correct? Okay. That brings us into recess. Could we have just another motion to move to recess? Thank you, Director Roth, seconded by Director Coots. All those in favor? A motion carried. Thank you. All right, I think we're into the Regional Hospital District. Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'd like to call the Hospital District Board of Directors meeting to order. I'd like to recognize we're conducting this meeting on the unceded traditional territories of Huichasa and Shuswap First Nations. And we also have directors calling in from other territories. I'd like to acknowledge those nations with our respect and our gratitude. Notice to attendees and delegates that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube on the Regional District website. We have an agenda in front of us. Is there any additions from directors? Is there any additions from the corporate officer?
None from me, thank you.
Seeing no additions, could I motion to approve the agenda as presented? Moved by Director Ross, second by Director Sparrow. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Any declarations or conflicts of interest? Seeing none, we'll go on to the minutes from the Board of Directors meeting dated February 14, 2024. Is any errors or omissions? Director Ross? I'm sorry, I was just going to move. Move that the minutes of Alberni Clifford Regional Hospital District Board of Directors meeting held on February 14, 2024 be adopted. Moved by Director Ross, seconded by Director Coots. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. No petitions, no correspondence for action. We do have a couple of items for correspondence for information from Island Health. The first one is a news release, Innovative Liver Cancer Treatment now available on Vancouver Island. And another news release from Island Health expands innovative virtual palliative care. Can I get a motion this correspondence be received for information? Moved by Director Roth, second by Director McEwen. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Next is request for decision, annual budget for years 2024 to 2028. Terry, can you speak on this, please?
Yes, for sure. Thank you. So we had significant discussion this morning at the Special Regional Hospital District Board of Directors following the Island Health presentation. I think where we landed at the end of the meeting is that we are recommending that we adopt the budget as seen today with the contribution to capital of approximately 1.6 million for the Tofino General Hospital discussion. We will then hold a strategic planning session for the hospital district later this spring or this year, and then maybe circle back to this budget at some point. So looking for adoption today, we will work on a more thorough letter for Island Health so that they understand this is not a no, but a pause potentially on the funding, so that they are aware of what steps we're planning on taking this year. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Terry? We're all talked out. It's late in the day. Would somebody like to start reading the motions? Dr. Roth?
Yeah, I move that the Alberni Claypot Regional Hospital District Board of Directors give first reading to bylaws cited as Alberni Claypot Regional Hospital District 2024 to 2028 Annual Budget Number 137.
Moved by Director Ross, seconded by Director Cote. Any final questions or comments? All in favor?
Any opposed? Motion carried. Go ahead, please, Director Roth.
I move that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional Hospital District Board of Directors give second reading to the bylaw.
Moved by Director Ross, second by Director Sparrow. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Go ahead, please.
Move that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional Hospital District Board of Directors give third reading to the bylaw.
Moved by Director Roth. Second by Director Cote. Questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Move that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional Hospital District Board of Directors adopt the bylaw cited as Alberni Clayoquot Hospital District 2024 to 28 Annual Budget Number 137.
Moved by Director Ross, second by Director Sparrow. Final questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Now we go on to reports. Banfield Health Center, Director Beckett.
No report today. Thank you.
Alberni Clayoquot Continued Care Society, Director Siga.
Just to follow up that, Joe McQuaid is no longer the, executive director. Brandon Smith is the executive director. Talha Chowdhury, has resigned as the human resources manager, and, we're in the process of looking at hiring for that position and also for the, financial manager position.
Thank you. West Coast Native Healthcare Society, Director Cote.
Thank you. We had our strategic planning on Saturday and looking at a bright future.
Thank you. That's good news. We've already talked about Topingo General Hospital, but Director Steer, did you have anything? Oh, he's gone. So we'll just say no report. Alberni Clayoquot Health Network, Director Cote.
Our meeting is next Wednesday, and we have new directors, new table of partners. No report at this time, unless Director Sega does.
Thank you. And West Coast General Hospital, I will be attending a regional meeting in Nanaimo on April 29th. So I'm looking forward to that because I haven't been to one yet. It'll be my first. Any other reports? Could I motion that the Regional Hospital Board of Directors receive reports A through G, moved by Director Johnson, second by Director McEwen. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. No unfinished business, so late business. Any questions online or by email, Heather?
There's no emails and no questions in Zoom.
Thank you. Could I motion to adjourn? Moved by Director Sega, second by Director Johnson. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, so that reconvenes us back to the original board meeting. And now we'll probably go in camera here. So there's only one item to go in camera, and so the chair usually reads out this and then I'll move it. So I'm going to move to close the meeting to the public as per the community charter under section 91F, law enforcement. If the board considers that disclosure could reasonably expected to harm the conduct of an investigation under or enforcement of an enactment. And so I'll move that, seconded by Director Roth. Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. So now we'll just stop broadcast.